Chapter 1462. Li Qingshan's maniacal laughter ignited Li Liehua's anger again. He wanted to burn him to ashes. Chao Qianjiao took half a step forward and blocked the heat wave for Li Qingshan. She chuckled and looked at Li Liehua. Li Liehua regained his composure and thought, "Why am I so easily provoked by this kid?" So far, no one had been able to withstand the full power of Li Qingshan's mockery. It could be described as the greatest ability. Li Liehua said to Yangon, "Master, please forgive me. This kid must be playing some tricks." The Inferno Legion's generals agreed. "That's right. There's definitely a trick. This kid isn't a good person." Li Qingshan curled his lips in disapproval. He really wouldn't shed a tear until he saw the coffin. Yangon was sure that he didn't see wrongly. He had already communicated with the Western Pure Lands and borrowed the power of Amitabha, but he still couldn't tell if it was a lie. There was only one answer. Li Qingshan was speaking the truth. Li Liehua regained some confidence. At least until now, there was no direct evidence to prove Li Qingshan's words. The unfettered heavenly scripture that he cultivates is the latest heavenly scripture created by Spirit Venerable Gui Hai. He walks the path of the great Freedom Sky Demon, so he probably has many secret techniques. Yangon wasn't convinced. No matter how many secret techniques Li Qingshan had, they had to be based on his cultivation. It was impossible for him to deceive a 5 tribulation expert like him. But this was a serious matter, so he could only sigh. Maybe. Li Liehua felt relieved. As long as Yangon changed his words, there would be a chance to turn the situation around. He said proudly, "Li Qingshan, do you think you can seize the position of Legion Commander with a trick? What wishful thinking. I'll send someone to Cold Blood Pass to investigate." Li Qingshan smiled. "You'll send someone? Then I'll be dead for sure." Li Liehua sneered. "What other tricks do you have?" Chao Qianjiao suggested, "Why don't I make another trip?" Li Qingshan and Li Liehua glanced at her at the same time, but did not reply. Chao Qianjiao said angrily, "Hey, what do you mean? Don't you trust me?" I don't trust him." Chao Qianjiao gritted her teeth. "These 2 damn stinky men." Abbot Yangon sighed and said, "This matter is of great importance. Let this old monk go." "No need." Li Qingshan raised his hand. He walked towards the door. "Everyone, please follow me. I have other evidence." Sigh. I didn't want to go through so much trouble. In front of the raging blaze hall, almost all the generals of the Inferno Legion and the Xuanwu Legion were gathered in an empty training field. Some monks from the Pure Land Temple also came to watch the show. They were divided into 3 groups, led by 3 people. These were the 3 major powers of Black Cloud City. Li Liehua stood with his hands behind his back, his expression solemn. Abbot Yangon chanted the name of Buddha and cultivated incessantly. Chao Qianjiao casually put her hands on her hips, waiting for a certain person to be unlucky. Their gazes all locked onto Li Qingshan, who walked towards the center of the training field alone. He stopped in the pure, white snow and smiled. He rose into the air. He activated his Sumeru ring. In that instant, countless corpses fell from the sky, like a storm hitting the ground heavily. Bang, 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 bang. Everyone was dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, a mountain of corpses piled up on the training field. The heavy smell of blood filled their noses and mouths. The mountain of corpses of 200,000 or 300,000 demon folk was extraordinarily majestic. Even though everyone present was experienced in battle, they still felt a great pressure and could not help but take half a step back. Li Qingshan stood high up on the mountain of corpses and laughed aloud. "Li Liehua, what else do you have to say?" There was no reply. Li Liehua Chao Qianzhao and Abbot Yangon had already arrived before the Mountain of Corpses and began to inspect them. Li Liahua's expression became more and more solemn. These demon folk were indeed the army stationed at Cold Blood Pass. Their armor, weapons, and auras were all fine. The abbot's eyes shone as he glanced around. They've all died recently, and it doesn't seem like they died to the hands of humans. For some reason, he thought of the sight he had seen at the border between the two regions, the colossal demonic figure that stood on the horizon. Chao Qianzhao rubbed her chin. She was also confused. These demon folks seemed to have been killed off by the demonified Tu Wancheng. Li Lihua noticed this too. He looked over furiously. Chao Qianzhao, you tricked me. This was basically the most logical explanation. Under Chao Qianzhao's coercion, Tu Wancheng had turned into a demonic beast and massacred Cold Blood Pass. Chao Qianzhao rolled her eyes. Why would I trick you? When I left, Tu Wancheng was still alive and well. He didn't turn into a demonic beast. Senior sister is mighty. The generals of the Xuanwu army called out. Li Lihua said, I never thought you'd actually be so despicable. Say that again. Chao Qianzhao squinted her eyes slightly. The two commanders were on the verge of a showdown. Li Qingshan sat on the Mountain of Corpses and watched on. He thought, fight, fight, fight. One dead is one less. The abbot said, Amitabha, please calm down, the two of you. There are many doubtful points here. Can a single Tu Wancheng really kill so many demon folk? These wounds don't seem like they were left behind by a berserk demonic beast either. Li Lihua sank into his thoughts. Demonic beasts were crazy and bloodthirsty, but they would not kill for no reason. Moreover, demonic beasts lacked rationality, which made them easier to deal with than demon folk, let alone a berserk demonic beast. Even if the demon king massacred 10,000 cities, it would be impossible for him to slaughter such an elite demon folk army. At the same time, Chao Qianzhao did not possess that ability either. Otherwise, she would have made such a great contribution and basically secured her position as the first senior sister. Why would she use it against him? Chao Qianzhao split open the Mountain of Corpses. Strange, there aren't any corpses of demon kings or demon emperors here. There's not even a little finger left. On the top of the Mountain of Corpses, Li Qingshan dodged the blade aura and swung his fist. Oi, be careful! Everyone's gazes gathered on him once again. They wanted to understand just what was going on. Li Qingshan laid out his hands. What are you all looking at me for? I just happened to discover it, but someone just happens to refuse to believe me. What can I do? Li Liahua's chest heaved as he clenched his fists. He seemed like he wanted to eat Li Qingshan whole. Suddenly, he closed his eyes and suppressed his anger. He clasped his hands at Li Qingshan. Junior brother Li, I was wrong. You ventured deep into the demon realm and discovered the drastic change in Cold Blood Pass. Not only did you complete the mission, you also made a great contribution to the sect. I will resign from the position of Corps Commander to the sect and recommend you to take over. The generals and colonels of Scorching Inferno Corps were shocked. Senior brother, you mustn't do that. Yang Gun's abbot hurriedly advised. Fellow Taoist Li, this is a serious matter. Please reconsider. Chao Qianzhao also felt that things had gone too far. The loss of 200,000 to 300,000 soldiers was nothing to the demon realm. There would definitely be a war in the coming year. The two corps would still need to work together to fight against the enemy. She frowned. Li Lihua, this is a battlefield, not a place for you to play house. Let this brat punch you a few times. It's fine if you take revenge for that punch. I've made up my mind. There's no need to say more. Li Lihua said decisively. In order to cultivate the scorching Inferno Heavenly Book, he changed his name to Li Liehua. He wanted to learn the true meaning of it. His heart was as fierce as fire. Wrong was wrong. Right was right. It was impossible for him to deny it or compromise for the sake of the general interest. Clap, 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 clap. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect Li Liehua to admit defeat so easily. He clapped his hands and laughed. Li Liehua, you're really scheming. What am I scheming? Li Qingshan jumped down from the corpse mountain. I'm just an inner disciple. I don't have the qualifications to be a corps commander. Even if you resign from the sect won't allow it. In the end, you'll still be a corps commander. Don't push me too far. Since I've already resigned, I won't go back on my word. Ha! I've pushed you too far. Who forced me to hand over the mysterious underworld cave abode? Who punched me the moment we met? Master Yangun, I'm not talking about you. Who wants to show me who's boss? Li Qingshan questioned 3 times. From start to finish, he didn't take the initiative to provoke Li Liehua. But since he had already vented his anger, it would be a little like a villain intoxicated by success if he continued to hold on to such a small matter. Senior Brother Li, I don't want your scorching Inferno Corps, nor do I care. Keep it for yourself. If I want to be a corps commander, I'll establish my own corps after becoming a direct disciple. Since you came at me for that punch, I'll return the favor. Li Liehua looked at him deeply. It was as if he was seeing him for the first time. Okay, I'll be waiting. Li Liehua led the group away. Li Qingshan kept the corpse mountain. Chao Tianjiao said, Brat, you're not suitable to stay in the scorching Inferno Corps. I'll transfer you to the Xuanwu army. I believe no one will object. Li Qingshan sucked in a breath of cold air. SSS, you won't harm me, right? Chapter 1463. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat as if he had experienced this scene before. He grabbed Chao Tianjiao's wrist and gently moved it away. Senior Marshal Sister, please don't put your hand on other people's shoulders. Chao Tianjiao saw the change in his expression and laughed wantonly. What, are you shy? Li Qingshan said indifferently, I only have Yaozhu in my heart. Senior Marshal Sister, you should give up. At this time, the Xuanwu army's generals were still on the training field. When they heard this, they really admired Li Qingshan from the bottom of their hearts. The army commander had a fiery temper. He had just offended Senior Marshal Brother Li, but he dared to talk to Senior Marshal Sister like this. They had never seen someone who could court death so easily. Chao Tianjiao grabbed Li Qingshan's shoulder tightly and gritted her teeth. You really know how to dream. Even if it was a normal demon emperor, she would have crushed his shoulder, but her fingertips felt a strange toughness. Her strength couldn't penetrate his skin. What kind of fortuitous encounter did this kid have? His physique is actually so strong. Li Qingshan secretly activated Ox Demon Forges, its hide, and the skin on his shoulder turned green. He said expressionlessly, Ouch, it hurts. Senior Marshal Sister, please spare me. Chao Tianjiao let go of his hand resentfully. Kid, don't be too proud. The army competition is about to start, and I want you to be the first one. I prepared a small gift for you. Don't worry, I definitely won't miss it. Li Qingshan waved goodbye to Chao Tianjiao and was about to return to the tower. Abbot Yangon suddenly blocked his path. Amit Ba, fellow Daoist, please wait. Abbot, what's the matter? Li Qingshan put his palms together and bowed. Abbot Yangon recalled the giant demon shadow that appeared at the border of the demon realm. He felt uneasy and wanted to ask about it. Li Qingshan's Tao of great freedom was inextricably linked to Buddhism, but he was also no different from the Devil's Tao, so he needed to be especially careful. You have made a great contribution to the great cause of fighting against the demons. You will definitely receive a lot of contribution points from the Wanxiang sect. You need to leave a note in the Pure Land Temple so that I can report it to the Desireless Heavenly Palace. Li Qingshan wanted to ask the monk for help with something. He smiled and said, "So that's how it is. Then I'll go with Master." The Pure Land Temple seems to be shrouded in a warm glow. The snow turns into raindrops before it falls to the ground. It moisturized the grass on the ground, making it look like a patch of spring sunshine. However, Li Qingshan stopped in his tracks and subconsciously frowned. He didn't know why, but he found it annoying. Abbot Yangon did not seem to notice his abnormality. He raised his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist, please come in." "It really is a pure land of Brahma." Li Qingshan smiled and stepped through the gate. In an instant, a tranquil and shapeless power seeped into his skin like the moistening of spring rain, nourishing his heart. The sound of the wooden fish and the chanting of scriptures came from afar. If a mortal was here, he would probably immediately leave the clamor of the mortal world. He would have the urge to convert to Buddhism. However, he felt more and more disgusted. The demonic thoughts kept growing, and his back started to feel hot again. In an instant, the tranquil and shapeless power was repelled. The sound of the wooden fish and the chanting of scriptures were like 10,000 mosquitoes and 10,000 flies buzzing in his ears. No matter how he listened, there was only one sentence, "Amitabha." "Fellow Taoist, you don't seem to like this place?" Abbot Yangon turned around and asked, "No, this place is very good." Li Qingshan suppressed the annoyance in his heart and forced a smile. "I really made the right decision to come here today." He had to quickly get rid of that Mahasvara statue. When he arrived at the Hall of Great Strength, the Buddha's gaze fell. He looked down at all living beings indifferently, as if he saw nothing. Li Qingshan was restless. He slightly lowered his head and wanted to smash this Buddha into pieces with one punch, then kill all the chanting monks. He took a deep breath and finally sat on a praying mat in front of the Buddha. Abbot Yangon sat on the other side of the table and pushed a book of merits over. "Please write it down, fellow Taoist." Li Qingshan took the brush and wrote. Li Qingshan was ordered to explore the demon domain and discovered that Cold Blood Pass had been massacred. It was now an empty city. He was about to put down the brush. Abbot Yangon continued, "If you have other merits, you can write them down as well, such as killing a few demon folk or discovering something else. They will all become your contribution to the myriad sect." Hearing that, Li Qingshan raised his head. "Do the demon folk I've killed in the past count?" Abbot Yangon's eyes flickered. "Yes, in order to fend off the demon domain. Not only did the mortal realm unite all the major sects, but they even did everything they could to encourage the smaller sects and independent cultivators to participate in the war. Cultivators who had fought against demon folk before were all geniuses, so they obviously would not be stingy with this bit of benefit." Something like that happened. I've killed quite a few demon folk before." Li Qingshan raised an eyebrow. This was a pleasant surprise. When he was in the 9 provinces, he had engaged in many battles to the death with demon folk. Countless demon folk had died to his hands. He actually failed to discover this when he investigated before. That was because there were far too few examples like this. Cultivators of the mortal realm obviously would not run off to the battlefield for no reason. However, among the 3,000 worlds, he just happened to be invaded by the demon domain, yet he was not devoured by the demon domain, and he even managed to ascend successfully in the end. Every single one of these incidents had a small probability of happening. Even Huilong, who also originated from the 9 provinces, had never experienced something like this. If Li Qingshan were a regular soul nascence cultivator, It would already be very difficult for him to kill 1 or 2 demon kings, and it was very likely for him to die. He would not have the life to claim the merit. Amitabha, killing demon folk is a merit. Li Qingshan scratched his head. Though, I don't really remember the exact number. Amitabha, as long as you didn't purposefully lie, and the number is not too different from the truth, it's fine. This is before the Buddha. The Buddha will bear witness for you. That's good. Li Qingshan thought about it and began to write. After he was done, he pushed the Book of Merit back to the abbot. It's done. When Abbot Rangoon saw the numbers on it, he was shocked. Li Qingshan smiled silently. In the past, he had even killed demon emperors, as well as many demon kings and demon commanders. His number completely surpassed the 200,000 or 300,000 demon folk army in Cold Blood Pass. If all of this was counted as merit and turned into a contribution to the Myriad sect, would he not rise up in a single stroke? He even thought about how many demon folk and demonic beasts had already been nurtured in the world of the 5 continents. If he killed them all later, would he still be far from becoming a true disciple? Probably never in their wildest dreams did the group of true disciples imagine that they would receive a great newcomer's gift as soon as they sent him to the battlefield of the demon domain. The abbot looked at the Book of Merit before looking at Li Qingshan. This was the Pure Land Temple. Before the Amitabha Buddha, even cultivators of the same cultivation as him could not lie without being discovered. Amitabha, I didn't think you'd actually make such a great contribution. I've been disrespectful. Li Qingshan sniggered. You flatter me, you flatter me. You're too polite, master. If it weren't for your reminder, I wouldn't have known I'd made such a great contribution either. The abbot asked further, May I ask why you killed so many demon folk? Li Qingshan thought about it. It wasn't in the human realm anyway. Don't tell me it was in the demon domain. The abbot leaned forward as his eyes shone brightly. Li Qingshan was taken aback. What are you thinking, master? Don't tell me you suspect me of being a spy from the demon domain. Chapter 1464. Before he knew it, the chanting had stopped. The monks' faces were sunken. The smoke from the incense curled into the grand hall. The Buddha watched on silently. His expression was unfathomable, as if he was smiling. Li Qingshan immediately felt tremendous pressure. He could no longer hold back his violent demonic thoughts. His back felt like it was on fire. His face was twisted and furious as he leaned forward as if he wanted to lunge at the abbot. His forehead almost pressed against the abbot's bald head. Suddenly, he powered the spirit turtle's method of suppression and halted all of his movements. He emphasized every single word, "Of course not." The abbot was basically tempted to ask, "If you're not, then who is?" He only managed to hold back the violent killing intent that rushed towards him. Even the deterrence of a demon king was nothing more than this. And this was the Pure Land Temple right below the Buddha's feet. His demonic nature was actually so heavy. However, Li Qingshan was not lying. The abbot could not help but admit this. He sat up straight and brought his palms together. Amitabha, I've wronged you. Though, with how you're behaving, how far are you from becoming demonic? Since ancient times, there had been countless cultivators who had fallen into the demonic path. In particular, at the border of the demon domain, even those with the strongest willpower would constantly be corrupted. I'd advise you to leave Black Cloud City and return to the Myriad sect. Li Qingshan frowned, ignoring whether Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao would let him go so easily. He did not really want to go back right now either. He had only been here for a few days, yet the benefits he had received were practically innumerable. The corpses of several 100,000 demon folk, armors and weapons, tremendous amounts of contribution, and he had even gotten his revenge on Li Liehua viciously. If he remained in the myriad sect, he would never be able to obtain something so good. As a result, he smiled, but in the abbot's eyes, his smile seemed even more vicious and vicious. "Master, it's not my fault." "Then whose fault is it?" The abbot countered with a question. "Please take a look, Master." Li Qingshan turned around and took off his clothes, revealing the lifelike image of the great freedom demon. It was deeply imprinted on his sturdy back, as if he was born with it. "This is—" Abbot Yangon was shocked. He could clearly feel the divinity within it. This was not just a tattoo image, but an imprint that could actually communicate with the realm of freedom. "I'm the first person to cultivate the unfettered heavenly tome. I don't have the experience of others as a reference, so I can only fumble around on my own. In order to speed up his cultivation, therefore, he used the sacrificial method of the Holy Scripture School, but he did not expect the Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant to possess him. Although his cultivation has increased greatly, his mind is still unstable. Even if we cut off his flesh, it will be difficult to remove it." Li Qingshan's words were not false at all. Abbot Yangon was suddenly enlightened. I see. In this way, the inexplicable hostility that Li Qingshan often revealed at that time was not strange. The master of the 3,000 worlds hated the Pure Land sect. The cultivators of the Pure Land sect were most likely to be disturbed by demons when they were going through tribulations. Demons of vexation. 5 demons emerged endlessly, and even the Son of Heaven demon came in person to prevent people from proving Arhat Buddhahood. The Pure Land sect was also the one who did the most to fight against the heretics. These two paths were fundamentally incompatible. The Mahesvara converted to Buddhism. What they respected was the power and wisdom of the revered one. They did not pursue extravagant pleasures as people thought. Instead, they attached great importance to asceticism and practiced hard on the great snow mountain all year round. They were the protectors of all ascetics. The Pure Land sect advocated the Mahayana Buddhism that could deliver all living beings from suffering. They widely accepted believers, established a Buddhist country, and went to the Pure Land. Even the Zen sect, which pursued enlightenment, and the Tantric sect, which paid attention to the mysteries of secret methods, were deeply affected. Other cultivation methods were despised, as the Hinayana Buddhism and even the Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant. Heretics were always more abominable than heretics. Therefore, the Mahesvara was both a god and a demon. I have just arrived in Black Cloud City. It is impossible for me to return to the Myriad Manifestations sect. Otherwise, I would be a coward. But please rest assured, I will see you later. I will naturally take a step back. Li Qingshan did not want to owe this monk a favor, so he did not ask for it. But he had a feeling that as long as he showed this Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant, Abbot Yangon would definitely take action, because hatred was always mutual. Since the Mahesvara hated the Pure Land sect so much, then the Pure Land sect must also hate the Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant. The situation was as he expected. Abbot Yangon thought to himself, the Mahesvara heavenly book, the Myriad Manifestations sect, is really going too far. If I let this kid go on like this, he will become a demon person and step into the outer path. The latter is even worse than the former. But it seems that he is not satisfied with this situation. I can try to guide him, since the revered one can subdue the Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant. I can also subdue this mere demon elephant. So he said, I can try to erase this Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant for you. What do you think? He made up his mind. Even if Li Qingshan opposed it, he had to do it. Li Qingshan was delighted. He knew that in front of this monk, any deception would be seen through, so he did not pretend. Then I will trouble you, master. Since both sides were willing, things were simple. Abbot Yangon ordered people to remove the table. Then he rang the bell and gathered all the monks in the temple. He told Li Qingshan to sit in the center of the hall while he sat behind Li Qingshan. Several hundred monks sat around him. Are you ready? Master, please do it. The sound of chanting rose and fell, accompanied by the sound of the golden bowl, wooden fish, and other magical artifacts. The buzzing sound echoed in the hall of great strength. Namo Amitba, Namo Amitba, Namo Amitba. It almost made Li Qingshan's head explode. His back felt like it was burning. The Mahesvara, heavenly demon elephant, glared at him as if it was about to come alive. It really is effective. Abbot Yangon brought his palms together. His eyelids were half closed, and he was dignified and solemn. A golden halo rose up behind his head, making him seem solemn and dignified. He seemed slightly similar to the great Buddha. Namo, Ami, Tua Buddha, Om, Ma, and iPad, me, hum. He spat out 12 words slowly. Every single word contained great power, like a lion's roar. The hall of great strength trembled slightly. As he spat out the last word, he slammed his palm towards Li Qingshan's back. Bang! Li Qingshan felt a sweetness in his throat and almost vomited blood. His organs felt like they were being torn apart. He thought to himself, this bald donkey is really ruthless. Is he trying to kill me? Abbot Yangon only had eyes for the Mahesvara, heavenly demon elephant. If he couldn't destroy it, then he would have to destroy Li Qingshan, who was walking on the path of Mahesvara. Although he was a disciple of the Wanxiang sect and couldn't be killed directly, he could injure him severely and stop his cultivation from advancing. At the very least, he could stop the Mahesvara heavenly scripture from spreading in the Wanxiang sect. The great Tao cannot coexist. Don't blame me. Li Qingshan clenched his teeth and withstood the attack. His body was so strong that even Abbot Yangon was shocked. He quickly calmed down and activated all of his strength. His body shone brightly like a sun falling into the hall of great strength. The great Buddha was shining brightly in the light. His palm pressed into Li Qingshan's back inch by inch, pressing on the Mahesvara, heavenly demon elephant's chest. The world is like a house of fire. All living beings are suffering. The pure land of bliss. Deliver all living beings from suffering. Amidst the incomparably devout chanting, the monks could vaguely see a translucent great Buddha walking down from the throne. The great Buddha's foot passed Abbot Yangon and stepped onto Li Qingshan's back. Li Qingshan felt an explosion in his head, as if it was going to explode. His sea of consciousness was in chaos. Only the great Buddha was standing there, looking down at him with a mysterious expression and a smile that wasn't a smile. The Mahesvara heavenly scripture began to circulate uncontrollably. Li Qingshan resisted with all of his strength, almost instinctively. The Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant really started to move. It waved its arms angrily and wanted to fight. However, this power was so vast, and this one was so firm. It was the only one in the world, and it couldn't be shaken. He couldn't even move a finger. The only thing he could do was to worship and convert to the Buddha. He couldn't help but feel a trace of regret. He couldn't have gone too far this time, right? In the eyes of Abbot Yangon, the Mahesvara heavenly demon elephant gradually became blurry and distorted. The corners of his lips curled up into a smile. Suddenly, a will filled with great destruction descended from the sky and penetrated the top of Li Qingshan's head. The Mahesvara, heavenly demon
Chapter
elephant behind him
1465.
opened its third eye on its forehead
After an unknown
and
period
shot
of
out a
time,
wisp of
Li
black
Qingshan's
divine
fingers
flame.
twitched.
It hit the
Every
space
inch of
between
his body
Abbot
felt
Yangon's
like it was
eyebrows.
torn into pieces
and pieced back
Abbot
together.
Yangon cried out
Then
in pain.
he was soaked
and fell
in lava.
on his back.
Every slight
Qingshan
movement was
also
10
fell
times
down.
or even 100 times
heavenly
more
demon
painful.
elephant behind
However,
him
compared to the
disappeared.
damage to
It
his
was as if
consciousness,
all of its
this was
power
nothing.
shot out
A Buddha
along
stood
with
in
the
his
black,
consciousness,
divine flame.
stepping on the
In its
demon
place was a golden
that was on the
Buddha.
verge of destruction. He had never liked Mahesvara so much because the statue of Mahesvara usually didn't affect him. However, this great Buddha always wanted him to worship and kneel down to beg for mercy. He didn't dare to relax. Otherwise, he would convert to Buddhism. It would be an irreversible and terrifying influence. Even nirvana rebirth would be useless. He staggered up from the ground and glanced at Yangon. He saw that his face was filled with pain, and his eyes were closed. There was a small hole between his eyebrows, and a wisp of black smoke rose from the hole. Even though Mahesvara couldn't fight against Buddha, it didn't mean that any monk could destroy his statue. Fuck his ancestors. This bald donkey has bad intentions towards me. As expected, he's not bald or poisonous, not bald or poisonous. No, I have to leave this place quickly. Li Qingshan endured the crazy pain and climbed up from the ground. He staggered out of the hall. Abbot! Abbot! There were cries of shock in the hall of great strength. The monks all gathered around. A monk with half of his shoulder exposed blocked Li Qingshan's path. You are not allowed to leave. He had passed 4 heavenly tribulations and obtained the Sutua river fruit. He was the protector monk of the Pure Land Temple. The other guardian monks returned to their senses as well. They wielded sticks, and blades, surrounding Li Qingshan in the Grand Hall. If it was on a normal day, Li Qingshan could kill them all with one hand. But now, any novice monk could defeat him with a light punch. There was a saying that a tiger would be bullied by a dog when it fell. Now, it had actually become a prophecy. Li Qingshan was furious. His eyes were about to pop out. Who dares to block me? His voice was low and hoarse, and his eyes were red like blood. The monks trembled and retreated. Those who were timid fell to the ground on their buttocks and scrambled to escape, especially the leading protector monk. His eyes became absent-minded, as if he was not in the hall of great strength, but in the dark and gloomy mountain forest, facing a fierce tiger that had gone mad because of injury as a mortal. A sense of terror gripped him in an instant. When he came back to his senses, he had already made way for them. The others didn't dare to stop him. They watched as Li Qingshan walked out of the door step by step. His back was hunched, and his footsteps were light. Every step seemed to exhaust all his strength, but no one dared to attack him. The Buddha was still sitting on his throne. His expression was unfathomable as he watched Li Qingshan leave with a faint smile on his face. Li Qingshan finally stepped out of the gate of the Pure Land Temple. The heavy snowflakes fluttered in front of him, dyed red by the blood in his eyes. The world was hazy and chaotic. His mind relaxed, and with a bang, snowflakes flew everywhere as he fell heavily to the ground. Little N, in the gray stone pagoda, Little N was sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed, cultivating. Suddenly, she felt uneasy and opened her eyes. Qingshan is in danger. She hurried to the pagoda and opened the door. Li Qingshan was lying outside the door, covered in mud. A long trail was left on the snow. Qingshan, she cried out in surprise. She held him in her arms and brought him to the top of the pagoda. Li Qingshan spat out 2 words with an extremely weak yet extremely determined voice. Slay the Buddha! Little N's heart skipped a beat. She had already seen the golden Buddha statue behind him. She waved her hand and pulled out the Buddha slaying sword. After a moment of hesitation, she held the sword hilt with both hands and stabbed it down. The Buddha statue radiated golden light, but it cracked under the white sword. The sword pierced the chest of the Buddha statue. It also pierced deeply into Li Qingshan's back. There was a loud bang in Li Qingshan's sea of consciousness. The Buddha statue collapsed, and his sea of consciousness shattered. The moment the Buddha statue disappeared, blood flowed all over his body. His bones turned into powder, and his internal organs turned into mush. Little Anne hurriedly threw away the Buddha slaying sword. She wanted to hold Li Qingshan, but Li Qingshan collapsed between her arms. His aura disappeared completely. Her whole body froze. She was dumbfounded, and her heart sank. After an unknown amount of time, she heard a weak phoenix cry. Her flesh and bones turned into flames. They were also very weak. It took a lot of effort for them to gather together and form a human. Nirvana rebirth. In the endless darkness, Li Qingshan felt his cheeks moisten. He slowly opened his eyes. Shaoan looked at him with tears in his eyes, and his eyeballs kept falling down. Li Qingshan was stunned for a moment. Little Anne threw herself at him and hugged him tightly. He couldn't help laughing. He patted her head and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine." His nose was also a little sore. This time, he really took a trip to the gates of hell. He didn't expect that the one who almost killed him wasn't Li Liehua or Chao Tianjiao, but a monk with whom he had no grudges. But he guessed that the bald donkey didn't have it easy either. This was equivalent to two mighty gods and Buddhas passing through their bodies, and they were both punished for destroying their statues. At least he still had the nirvana rebirth. That bald donkey probably wasn't so lucky. This is really embarrassing. Now that he thought about it, he still felt a lingering fear. But fortunately, he had finally wiped away the messy statues behind him. He also felt very relaxed. At this time, exhaustion washed over him like a tide. He yawned and murmured, "I want to sleep." Little Anne carried him horizontally and placed him on the soft big bed. She still held him in her arms. This girl, Li Qingshan thought, and fell into a deep sleep. What happened in the Pure Land temple quickly spread throughout the whole Black Cloud City. In particular, the news that Abbot Rangoon had a hole in his head and was still in a coma had shaken the entire Black Cloud City. In the fiery hall, Li Liehua was seriously listening to a monk's account of what happened in the Pure Land temple. The monk cried, "The abbot suspects that Li Qingshan is a spy from the demon area. That's why he was plotted against. Senior brother, please help us arrest Li Qingshan immediately." Li Liehua was silent. A spy from the demon area? How could there be such an arrogant spy in the world? And even he definitely would not be the abbot's opponent in the Pure Land temple. How could Li Qingshan possess something like that? Moreover, he had his back towards the abbot, forcefully receiving the palm strike without putting up any resistance. There must be something wrong with this. In any case, Li Qingshan was a disciple of the Wanxiang sect. Outsiders couldn't interfere. "Got it. You go back to the temple first. I will investigate as soon as possible." Hu Jigang scolded. "This kid is really a disaster." Li Liehua frowned. "Don't talk nonsense." "First, senior brother, I'm not talking nonsense. There's definitely something wrong with this kid." All the generals agreed. At the same time, in the Black Tortoise Hall, Chao Tianjiao listened to another monk's account. The same thought flashed through her mind. This kid has only been in Black Cloud City for a few days. First, he went to the demon area. The demon folk stationed at Cold Blood Pass were all killed. When he returned to the Fiery Hall to report, almost all the generals of the Fiery Legion were wounded. Commander Li Liehua was greatly humiliated. After another trip to the Pure Land temple, Abbot Yangon immediately collapsed. This is too strange. Now he has entered the Black Tortoise Army. Hiss, it won't be my turn next, will it? Chao Tianjiao, who had never been afraid of anything, also felt a chill in her heart. she suddenly felt a little regretful. To be continued. Even when Li Qingshan cupped his hands and said, "Senior sister, I'm here," she acted as if she didn't hear him. Li Qingshan thought, "This woman is trying to show off again." He didn't say anything and began to admire her back. He had to say, her figure was excellent, standing straight in the wind and snow. Even from the back, she looked heroic. Her legs were slender and straight. Her waist was flexible and strong. Her buttocks. Look at that, but, as expected of the eldest senior sister. Li Qingshan licked his lips. He stared at her. Crack! The stone railing in Chao Tianjiao's hand cracked. "If you take another look, I'll dig out your eyeballs." Li Qingshan knew that she wasn't just talking. He even guessed that she had done so. Considering that he was currently in a weak state, he retracted his gaze and said with a smile, "Why are you looking for me, senior sister?" Chao Tianjiao looked back and said, "Do you know? If Yangon doesn't wake up, what will happen to you?" "He will wake up." Li Qingshan wasn't worried at all. As one of the people involved, he believed that Abbot Yangon wouldn't die. After all, he was a two-fruit arhat who had undergone 5 heavenly tribulations, and he was in his own territory. Most importantly, as one of Buddha's most loyal brothers, Li Qingshan pointed up, "Buddha is protecting him." That's not wrong. Chao Tianjiao came back to her senses and looked Li Qingshan up and down with great interest. "Then, who is protecting you?" Now that Abbot Yangon was still unconscious, he acted as if nothing had happened. Li Qingshan said proudly, "I have always protected myself." Chao Tianjiao said sarcastically, "I heard that you crawled back." Although the snowstorm that day was fierce, there were still people who saw this scene. Under the propaganda of the generals of the Fierce Flame Regiment, it quickly became a laughingstock in the army. Li Qingshan smiled. "There are times when I can't protect myself." Chao Tianjiao was surprised. She had always seen him as a fanatic. This kind of thing would be regarded as a great shame by an ordinary soldier. She didn't expect him to admit it so readily. Instead, she felt a trace of admiration. If he wasn't ambitious and determined, he wouldn't be so broad-minded. As far as she knew, Li Liehua didn't laugh when he heard about this. Instead, his expression was grave. "It's a pity that he joined too late. Otherwise, he might really be able to compete with us for the position of eldest senior brother." Of course, she wouldn't say these words. She said solemnly, "Tell me in detail what happened that day at Cold Blood Pass." This strange situation made her feel uneasy. Internal conflicts and grudges were small matters. The war against the demon region was the bigger picture. In the years of war, demon emperors often fell. There were also many human emperors who fell. They wouldn't be merciful just because you were a direct disciple or eldest senior sister. They would only be more sinister and cruel. Chapter 1467. Li Qingshan's heart trembled inexplicably. The illusion collapsed, and his Yin spirit escaped. It was faintly discernible and extremely weak. He quickly returned to his physical body. Chao Tianjiao's eyes were in a trance for a moment. Then she returned to Xuanwu Hall. She glanced at his face and smiled. "You're seriously injured." Li Qingshan smiled dryly. "Thank you for your concern, senior sister. I'm a little worried about whether you can accept my gift in the upcoming army competition." Chao Tianjiao looked like she would let him go if he begged her. Li Qingshan said indifferently, "I want to fight 10. You're really stubborn. Don't blame me if you lose face. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving." Li Qingshan was indeed stubborn. In his current weak state, he wouldn't recover without a month, but he would never wag his tail and beg Chao Tianjiao. Chao Tianjiao waved her hand. Li Qingshan turned around and left. When he was about to walk out of the door, he suddenly heard her say, "You should be prepared to face a mad demon overlord. This is the opening ceremony of the army competition. You can only win and not lose, otherwise I won't spare you." Li Qingshan looked back at her and nodded slightly. "Thank you." The so-called mad demon overlord was probably a demonic beast. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated. As long as you know what the opponent is, you can make a lot of arrangements in advance. In fact, he already had some ideas now. After Li Qingshan left, Chao Tianjiao shook her head. "Damned brat, you're still so cocky even when you're injured. I've been merciful this time, seeing as you've allowed me to pass the cold blood pass." Thinking of this, her expression was a little dignified. The situation in Lingxua Pass was indeed very strange. It was not as simple as Tu Wanqing turning into a demonic beast, but a prepared and purposeful massacre. Moreover, demon overlords and demon kings were cleared in advance. But what was the purpose of all this? Chao Tianjiao looked up at the sky, only to see black clouds and heavy snow. Li Qingshan left the Black Tortoise Hall, but did not return directly to the Greystone Tower. Little, and was probably concentrating on cultivating, but in his current state, he was unable to cultivate, so he simply strolled around the city. This leisurely posture and leisurely expression, in the midst of the ferocious-looking soldiers on the street who were in a hurry, it was rather eye-catching. There were actually quite a few people who recognized him, but all of their expressions were unfriendly, and none of them came forward to greet him. If it wasn't for Li Qingshan's identity and strength, there might have been a lot of people who came up to provoke him. Not only had Li Qingshan offended Li Liehua, he had also humiliated the entire raging Inferno army. The grudge with Chao Tianjiao. He had offended the Xuanwu army again. In fact, if that was all, it would not have been enough to make the ordinary soldiers so hostile towards him. On the contrary, he might have gained quite a bit of respect. After all, the strong were worshipped in the army. But recently, he had caused the abbot Yangon to fall into a coma. He had completely become a great sinner in the eyes of the entire army. Not only was the abbot responsible for purifying the demonic land and recording the contributions, but he also had to remove the demonic chi from the soldiers who fought in the demon domain. Otherwise, it would be very easy for them to suffer from chi deviation or even become demon folk. He upheld the pure land-sex philosophy of equality for all. He was easygoing and amiable, so he was extremely popular in Black Cloud City. Who knew how many people had been helped by him, especially by the soldiers at the bottom level. As a result, Li Qingshan was now notorious. As a disciple, he was a general as soon as he joined the army, so he now had a nickname, General Crawling on the Ground. Li Qingshan's hearing was just too good. He could always hear countless mutterings, none of which were good. Even though he was broad-minded, he still hated them to the core. Suddenly, he heard shouts and fighting sounds, as well as cheers and curses, which immediately dispersed the mutterings. He was curious. After turning around a tower, he arrived at a drill ground. There was a dense crowd of 2,000 or 3,000 people who were cheering and cursing around a ring in the middle of the drill ground. 2 soldiers were fighting fiercely on the ring. One was wearing light armor and holding a spear. The other was wearing heavy armor and holding a sword and shield. Although they were all low-level soldiers who had not even undergone the first heavenly tribulation, they were all full of fighting spirit and murderous intent. Every time they fought, it would cause a great commotion. What's going on? Li Qingshan grabbed a young soldier who was watching the show at the outermost edge. The young soldier stared straight at the ring and said without looking back, "Are you new here? You don't even know this. This is the competition of the whole army." Li Qingshan said in surprise, "The competition of the whole army has already begun." Isn't it going to take half a month? Sigh, you really don't know anything. The competition of the whole army will begin as soon as winter comes. Li Qingshan rubbed his chin. He guessed that this was probably the preliminaries, and the final, half a month later, would be the competition. His guess was correct. Once winter came, the wind and snow would be fierce, and the cold would be harsh. The army was unable to advance. Apart from small-scale investigations and assassinations, they were basically in a state of truce. An army of 1 million holed up in the barracks of Black Cloud City, and they were all hot-blooded, combative men. If they were not given something to do, they would definitely cause trouble. As a result, the competition of the whole army would be held as soon as winter came. In order to inspire the soldiers' passion, not only would they be given great rewards, but their status in the army would also be directly determined. Even the lowest-level soldiers could make an appearance in the competition that Li Qingshan would be participating in if they could place highly. Not only was this an honor, but if they caught the attention of a certain general, they could immediately be promoted or chosen as a personal guard. They could even obtain a cultivation method and formally set foot on the path of cultivation. Many lucky people like that would be born every year. And because the winter here was particularly long, basically half of the time was spent fighting demon folk, while the other half was spent on the competition of the whole army. These were the two most important paths of promotion in the army. Although the latter often resulted in deaths, it was much safer than fighting demon folk, so the entire army was obviously fired up with enthusiasm. Even those who had failed could happily gamble a few rounds if they believed in their own judgment and luck. The hurried and vicious soldiers along the way were either going to watch the competition or to participate in it. At this moment, cheers surged up like a wave, reaching for the clouds. In the ring, the soldier with the spear seized an opening and stabbed his spear into the gap in his opponent's armor. The young soldier's face was bright red from excitement. He could win quite a lot of this round. Li Qingshan smiled instead. He's lost. Before he had even finished speaking, the soldier with the blade and shield tossed aside his padao decisively and grabbed his spear. Ignoring his injuries, he suddenly charged forward with his shield. With a bang, he knocked his opponent off the ring. The cheers immediately died down, replaced by another cheer in the blink of an eye, like the waves behind surpassing those before. The young soldier stamped his feet and cursed. Only then did he turn around. He was taken aback. "Sai, why do I find you so familiar?" You're Crawl." "Crawl what?" The corner of Li Qingshan's eye twitched. The young soldier corrected himself in a hurry. General." No matter how notorious Li Qingshan's reputation was, he could not be humiliated by a low-ranking soldier. However, the young soldier only seemed to omit the word ground. Li Qingshan was furious. "My low profile isn't something you can brag about." He knocked the young soldier unconscious with a knife hand strike and tossed him out of the arena. He conveniently took the metal helmet from him and put it on his head before making his way to the center of the field. "Son of a bitch, what are you squeezing for?" "Those at the back, get back." He squeezed through the crowd amidst a series of curses and arrived below the ring. The soldier with the blade and shield had also left the ring to tend to his wounds. The ring happened to be empty, so he leapt onto it. Under everyone's gaze, he raised his arms and called out, "Long live Li Qingshan!" To be continued. Chapter 1468. This shout overshadowed all the noise on the drill ground, and it was filled with pride. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Now, opposing the crawling general Li Qingshan had already become a military consensus. Where did this lowly soldier come from? How dare he go against the world's condemnation? Li Qingshan wore an iron helmet that covered half of his face. That was the standard equipment of the lowest-ranking soldiers. Moreover, Who would have thought that a dignified general would pretend to be a lowly soldier and personally go on stage to wave the flag and shout for him? This place was not far from Xuanwu Hall, so Chao Tianjiao heard it clearly. She came to the window and recognized Li Qingshan at a glance. She held her forehead and sighed. This kid is too outrageous. Just now, she thought that he was broad-minded and extraordinary, but now he personally went on stage to challenge her. It was really narrow-minded, but inexplicably, she felt that this was his style. The corner of her mouth raised into a smile, and she continued to watch with great interest. Immediately, a burst of angry curses erupted from below the arena. "Get down! Get down!" Li Qingshan arrogantly glanced around, gave a thumbs up, and gestured downwards. Trash! This angered all the soldiers. Some picked up stones and threw them at him, while those who did not throw them only did so because they could not find stones under their feet. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. For a moment, the sky was filled with flying stones towards the arena. Li Qingshan dodged here and there, looking very slow, but he managed to avoid all the flying stones. This was after all the drill ground. Soon, the soldiers could not find any more stones to throw, and the arena was covered with gravel. Li Qingshan picked up a pile and shouted, "Return them to you?" Even though he did not use much strength, the people below the arena were squeezed together, and it was impossible to dodge. For a moment, there were cries of pain. "Be careful! Get out of my way! Ouch! My head! Motherfucker, who stepped on my foot!" There were thousands of people below the arena, but only a few were actually hit. However, in order to dodge, they squeezed each other, causing even more chaos. It was a complete mess. I haven't even exerted any strength, and you've already fallen. Li Qingshan stood on the stage and laughed loudly. Everyone glared at him and cursed him loudly. The soldiers below the stage were itching to come up and beat him up, but they all looked at the tower on the side of the drill ground. The officer in charge of supervising the tournament stood up. Pointing at Li Qingshan, he said harshly, "Which brigade? And which team are you from? What's your name? How dare you disturb the drill grounds? Do you know that you have committed a capital offense?" In Black Cloud City, below the two corps commanders were the generals, and all of them were disciples of the Myriad Manifestation sect. He commanded all the battalions. Then there were the commandants who commanded the various regiments. They were all disciples who had passed the imperial examination, and they were considered the upper echelons of the army. They formed the core of the army. Below that were the ranks of the commander-in-chief of the brigade. The commandant was the head of the middle-level generals and was infinitely close to the upper echelons. Only Golden Corps cultivators who had gone through the second heavenly tribulation could assume this position. Therefore, from the generals to the colonels, they were collectively referred to as lieutenant colonel. His status was noble. This commandant was no exception. He was a Golden Corps cultivator, and in the Myriad Manifestation sect, he was only a study companion. He couldn't be considered an official disciple, but in the army, he was a ruthless character whose words carried enormous weight. Normally, with a glare from his eyes, even the most ferocious soldiers would be frightened and obediently bow their heads. With him here, no matter how angry the soldiers were, they wouldn't dare to recklessly rush into the arena. However, Li Qingshan didn't care about this. He straightened his back and held his head high. He asked in return, "Which brigade and which team are you from? What's your name? How dare you speak to me like this? Do you know that you have committed a capital offense?" Once again, he successfully used the great taunt technique. The effect was outstanding. The commandant flew into a rage. "Take him down!" A burly soldier immediately rushed into the arena. He was wearing armor and holding a weapon. It was obvious that he was here to compete. To be able to come this far, he could already be considered a fierce soldier in the army. "I am Zhang. Get down." Li Qingshan kicked him off the arena. Another wave of curses came from below the arena. "Despicable person, sneak attack," and so on. "All of you scum, listen up." Li Qingshan cupped his fists and made a gesture of infinite worship. General Li Qingshan is mighty and domineering, benevolent and righteous, handsome and confident, and uses virtue to win people over. He praised himself as unparalleled in the heavens and unparalleled on the earth, with no blind spots in all 360 degrees. Chao Tianjiao frowned and gritted her teeth as she listened. Finally, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. The soldiers were all furious. They originally thought that Li Qingshan wasn't that bad, but now they were convinced. Li Qingshan finished praising himself and waved his fist. "If anyone isn't convinced, come out. I'll beat them until they are convinced." The commandant's veins popped on his forehead. He couldn't take it anymore. "Damn it, beat him to death." With this order, everyone responded. The crowd was enraged and surged towards Li Qingshan like a black tide. "Ha, good." Li Qingshan punched and kicked. If one came, he would beat one. If two came, he would beat a pair. When the soldiers got within 5 steps of him, they were all sent flying. They flew over everyone's heads and fell back into the crowd. Even though Li Qingshan was in a weakened state, he wasn't someone these soldiers could touch. In his eyes, they were just going to stand up and let him hit them one by one. At first, he was still thinking about his moves, how he should punch, where he should kick, but in the end, he just swung his fists randomly, relying on his innate divine ability, the strength of the earth. He purposely held back his strength. He was here to vent his anger, not to kill, so he didn't have to worry about exhausting his strength. That commandant gradually felt that something was wrong. This soldier was too strong. In just a short while, he had already sent hundreds of people flying, but he was still full of energy and didn't show any signs of weakness. Furthermore, none of the people he sent flying were killed or seriously injured. Some could even get up and rush back to the arena. He was obviously being merciful. Even if he was a golden core cultivator, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the attacks of so many soldiers with his bare hands. He couldn't fly or kill them. It was even more impossible for him to be so skillful. These soldiers weren't ordinary mountain bandits. They were all veterans who had been through hundreds of battles and were much stronger than ordinary chi practitioners. Moreover, they were organized and disciplined. They knew how to cooperate with each other and advance and retreat together. Many of them were already using weapons, but they weren't in military formations. Otherwise, even if a golden core cultivator was trapped in a formation, he would be cut into pieces and wouldn't be able to escape. A brigade commander whispered, "Commandant, he can't be Li." Go and report to the Legion commander." The commandant's heart was pounding. If it really was that guy, then he wasn't someone a mere commandant like him could deal with. If he beat him up along the way, there would be no way to reason with him. "Who should I report to?" "Both of you." There were many people on the drill ground who understood. The soldiers might be weak, but they weren't stupid. Very soon, many people guessed Li Qingshan's identity. The commotion here was too great and had long since alarmed the entire city. Everyone rushed to spread the news. The general crawling on the ground is beating someone up. Chapter 1469. Bad news travels 1,000 miles while good news never goes out. Everyone in Black Cloud City knew about the crawling general. He was basically the most powerful person below the human emperor. At this time, the 108 drill grounds inside and outside of Black Cloud City were all holding martial arts competitions. The soldiers' movements were basically unrestricted, with the hundreds of camps and the roaring thunder formation, they were not afraid of sneak attacks from the demon domain at all. If the demon emperor dared to leave the army and come alone, even 10 of them would die here, let alone one. So when the news spread, everyone felt they had to watch it. Last time, hundreds of thousands of demon people's corpses piled up on the drill ground, and the crawling general made a bet with Li Liehua. Many people already regretted not watching it. In particular, in the drill grounds closest to the drill ground, the people on the stage were still fighting, but the audience below had all run away. Looking at the edge of the drill ground, the captains and the brigade commanders had also disappeared. The two looked at each other and stopped fighting. "Brother, let's go and have a look too. Without the captain's judgment, it's useless to fight." "Okay, brother, please, why don't you go first?" "Why should I go first?" The whistling sound became louder and louder. "Okay, let's go together." "Okay, 1, 2, 3. On the tower beside the drill ground, the supervising captain saw the situation was getting worse and worse. He was so anxious. After waiting for a long time, the brigade commander finally reported to him. He asked hurriedly, "What did the eldest senior brother say?" The eldest senior brother said, "Let him fight." "What about the eldest senior sister? What does she think?" "The eldest senior sister, she's leaning on the window to watch. And she seemed to be very happy." "What?" The captain was stunned for a moment before he understood. Looking in the direction of the Xuanwu Hall, he vaguely saw Chao Tianjiao. He hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed to her. Looking at the drill ground again, the arena was drowned by the sea of people. Li Qingshan stood among thousands of people like a towering wall. No matter how the waves hit him, he remained unmoved and defeated all the enemies with ease. Seeing people surging in from all directions, the shouts of "The crawling general is fighting" echoed in the streets and alleys. He was amused and annoyed at the same time. He took off his helmet and shouted, "The crawling general is here. Who dares to fight me?" The drill ground was silent, and the surging tide also stopped. The fists and weapons of the soldiers charging in front of him stopped in midair, looking at each other in dismay. Even if he was a crawling general, he was still a general, and his status was far from what ordinary soldiers could reach. Li Qingshan mocked, "What? You only dare to bully the foot soldiers, and now you're terrified after seeing the general?" 10,000 people were enraged, glaring angrily and gnashing their teeth. Amidst the chaos, someone shouted, "Kill!" A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Tens of thousands of people shouted in unison, and the momentum was like a landslide. Kill! Courage was the soul of an army, and glory was the soul of an army. You can let them die, but you can't call them cowards. Just now, they did not dare to act rashly. He wasn't afraid of how strong Li Qingshan was, but he was worried about his identity as a general. Military law was strict. Their ranks were clear and could not be offended lightly. But at this stage, it was unbearable. The training they received was not to avoid danger, but to fight to the death without retreating. They used their flesh and blood to surround and kill the demon kings and demon monarchs, creating opportunities for their own generals. There were demon emperors who died at the hands of foot soldiers. Even though they paid the price of the human emperor's death, the entire army was almost wiped out. Not to mention that Li Qingshan was just a Yin spirit cultivator. Even if he was a human emperor or a demon emperor, they would dare to fight. Li Qingshan felt the pressure increase, and his expression changed slightly. Such a tragic and decisive aura. Is this the war of the 6 paths of reincarnation? And this was because most of them did not have any armor or weapons. They did not have any generals to form battle formations or flags or battle drums to gather the military aura. If they were to wear armor and hold weapons, form battle formations, and gather the military aura, how imposing would it be? He could not help but feel more respect for these ordinary soldiers. Moreover, on the real battlefield, where the two regions intersect, cultivators would be greatly affected. It was not strange for them to die at their hands. If I go to the battlefield in the future, I must not be careless. Once the army was formed, every ordinary soldier felt fearless, and their strength multiplied. They rushed towards Li Qingshan regardless of anything, advancing wave after wave, not afraid of death. And fresh troops from outside the drill ground were endless, and gradually entered within 5 steps of Li Qingshan. Originally, every battalion had its own organization, especially the Scorching Inferno Legion and the Xuanwu Legion, which were even more distinct and competitive. Now that they heard that their opponent was the crawling General Li Qingshan, and that his words were so infuriating, they actually broke the organization and joined forces. Chao Tianjiao chuckled and said, "The unity of Black Cloud City depends on you." "Lieutenant, how dare you?" "Oomph. Does this guy really think that there is no one in my army?" The supervising lieutenant squatted in a corner of the drill ground, and the brigade marshals formed a circle to express their admiration. He was the one who shouted the first kill. In order to avoid being resented by Li Qingshan, they deliberately shifted their strategy to this place. He tried to guess the intentions of the 2 corps commanders, especially the eldest senior brother Li Liehua, because he was from the Scorching Inferno Legion. The corps commander must hate Li Qingshan to the core, and must want to teach this guy a lesson. That way, it wouldn't count as ganging up on a general. He actually wants to fight against an army by himself. He really hasn't seen a battle before. It's a pity that we didn't prepare and couldn't form a battle formation. Otherwise, he would be in serious trouble. The supervising lieutenant hammered the ground and stood up. "Fuck him. You guys go contact the sergeants, and captains and form a battle formation to face the enemy. If we don't teach him a lesson today, he won't know what military prestige is. I want him to walk in and crawl out again." "Yes, sir." Chapter 1470. His laughter was very carefree. Buried deep in the sea of people, Li Qingshan's fighting spirit was ignited. He felt his weakness disappear a little. Hee, other people recover by resting, but I recover by fighting. Huh. With a loud shout, Li Qingshan waved his arms and collapsed. Ah! Hundreds of soldiers flew out, leaving only Li Qingshan in the arena. His black hair fluttered in the wind and snow. The smile on his face was wild and arrogant, like a child's mischievousness. His eyes shone brightly as he looked down the dueling ring in high spirits. If he was just venting his anger on a whim earlier, then now it was as if he was looking at an interesting toy. Bang, 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 bang. The soldiers fell to the ground. Everyone was shocked. They did not expect him to be so strong. Just now, the pressure on Li Qingshan was not only limited to these hundreds of people, but also the condensed military chi of the entire army. He easily broke through it, and the morale of the army was shaken. Someone shouted, "Everyone, don't panic. He is alone." Li Qingshan looked in the direction of the voice, and immediately recognized that it was the supervisory colonel just now. They were indeed an elite army that had experienced hundreds of battles. The morale of the army quickly stabilized, and the military chi condensed again. In this small drill ground, there were already 20,000 to 30,000 people gathered. The surrounding barracks, streets, walls, and trees were all filled with people. There were close to 100,000 people, and they were all fresh troops. Very good. This way, I can play for a while longer. Li Qingshan licked his lips and smiled. Alone, with a shake of his body, black shadows appeared, and they all turned into Li Qingshan's image. They were his thought clones, and there were more than 100 of them. The clones either advanced or retreated, but they never left Li Qingshan's side. In the blink of an eye, they formed a battle formation. I know military formations and what not too. Li Qingshan had done a lot of homework before coming here. Military formations were one of them. This was not a secret. Although there were many variations in military formations, they could not be compared to the complexity of formations. The key was in the training of the soldiers and the coordination of the various departments. The better the training, the better the coordination. The more stable the army's morale was, the more condensed the army's morale would be. What could be more tacit than the cooperation between clones after the formation of the army? Even though it was only a formation of 100 people, it had the aura of a magnificent army with tens of thousands of men and horses, able to contend with an army of 10,000. Chao Qianjiao raised her eyebrows slightly. Clone into formation. This move was not created by Li Qingshan. Any cultivator skilled in the art of cloning would consider how to organize weak clones to fight against powerful enemies. Clones forming a formation was the simplest and fastest choice. But in the end, these cultivators would find that while this move looked powerful, it had many limitations. First of all, the number of doppelgangers was limited. The scale of the army formation would also be limited, and it would take a lot of mental energy to maintain it. It might be better to cast some other spells. Secondly, it was not suitable for fights of magical powers. Although the military formation was powerful, it moved slowly and had a limited attack range. Unless it was a head-on collision, the enemy just needed to keep a distance and wait for the military formation to collapse on its own. Even using it for defense was like drinking poison to quench thirst. So this move was not very common, but it was very suitable for Li Qingshan at this moment. He ordered, "Charge!" He finally had a taste of what it felt like to be a great general. As the commander-in-chief, he took the lead, and the 100-man formation charged against the army of 10,000. In an instant, it was as if they were crushing dry weeds and rotten wood. Everywhere they passed, countless enemies screamed and flew into the air. Like a sharp plow plowing deep into the ground, the enemy's loose formation could not stop his charge. Most importantly, the enemy did not have a commander-in-chief. The strongest among them was only a lieutenant, and the difference in strength between them was not just a little bit. In other words, there was no one who could last one round. The general was the courage of the army. An army without a general was like a beast without claws and teeth. No matter how big their physique was, the power they could use was extremely limited. Before the commandant regained his senses, Li Qingshan had already charged in front of him and crushed him. He lay on the ground, breathing weakly, his body covered in footprints. Chao Qianjiao watched as Li Qingshan ran amok on the drill ground. She sighed in her heart. If this was on the battlefield, this would be a one-sided massacre. Although it was because there was no commander-in-chief to hold the line, and he did not have any armor or weapons, it was obvious that the lad did not fight seriously. Furthermore, he was still injured and weak. With his strong physique and that mysterious spirit, he could fight the enemy head-on and sneak an attack. If not for so many grudges, he would definitely be a strong ally. He would definitely be of great help in the future battles. As long as he does not fall along the way, how difficult would it be to become a direct disciple? Thinking about the 30-year bet, she laughed lightly. "Lad, even I want to kill you in the cradle." Of course, this was just a joke. Regardless if it was her or Li Laihua, they would not have such a motive. Relying on oppressing the latecomers to maintain one's position was a form of extreme stupidity and weakness. It would only weaken one's willpower. They had absolute confidence in moving forward. Even if they wanted to kill Li Qingshan, it would only be for revenge or to vent their anger. It would not be because of such despicable thoughts. But we cannot let him continue like this. Otherwise, the morale of the army will be gone. Chao Qianjiao was about to make a move when she saw a monk rushing over from outside the drill ground. He said loudly, "Under the orders of Abbot Yangon, I invite General Li Qingshan to the Pure Land Temple." His voice was as loud as a bell. The soldiers were shocked and surprised. "The abbot is awake?" Li Qingshan's heart trembled. The experience at the Pure Land Temple not long ago had left him with lingering fear. Furthermore, the monk who came to invite him was the protector monk who wanted to block his path. He said invite, but his face was filled with anger. That day, he was chased away by Li Qingshan with a single word. It was a great humiliation to him. Chapter 1471. Li Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief and prepared himself for battle. He stepped into the Pure Land Temple. Bypassing the Mahavira Hall, the winding path led to a secluded place with deep flowers and trees. Abbot Yangon personally welcomed him outside the meditation room. Li Qingshan was shocked because Abbot Yangon looked even more spirited than him. His face was ruddy, and his eyes were full of vigor. His white eyebrows had turned black, and his white beard was gone. The wrinkles on his face had reduced by a lot. He was like a withered tree that had come back to life. He had clearly suffered such a serious injury, but this Pure Land sect was too awesome. Could Buddha be his father? Abbot Yangon smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, don't slander the Buddha." Li Qingshan's heart trembled, and the joy he felt from battling the army vanished without a trace. He was not an opponent for Abbot Rangoon in this state. Not only had his appearance become younger, but his spirit had also risen to a whole new level. His eyes could practically see through a person's heart. He put his palms together and bowed. He looked up and said, "Abbot, why did you call me here?" Abbot Yangon looked at him and sighed. "You really haven't changed." Li Qingshan heard this, and anger rose in his heart. This bald donkey caused me so much trouble, and he still dares to say such words. Fellow Taoist, don't be angry. This is the only way to eliminate the great, freedom, heavenly demon elephant. Of course, this is also my intention to hide it. Amitabha, I have sinned, please forgive me. Abbot Yangon put his palms together and bowed to apologize. Li Qingshan dodged and didn't accept the bow. What was wrong with this monk? Could it be that he was plotting something again? I was opportunistic and worshipped the Buddha. I can't blame anyone else. Master helped me and harmed me. Our grudges are settled now. Abbot Yangon smiled and said, "Do you think I want to harm you again?" Li Qingshan didn't stand on ceremony. "It's nothing good anyway." Abbot Yangon suddenly became serious. "I asked you to come because I want to ask you something. Are you willing to convert to Buddhism?" "How sudden?" Li Qingshan took a step back and called out, "I knew it wouldn't be anything good. He would be better off dead than converting to some bullshit god or Buddha." Abbot Yangon's eyes shone. "You haven't answered me yet." "Thank you. If you don't want to, can I go now? I'm warning you, don't stop me from leaving. I'm a disciple of the Myriad Appearance sect." "Ha, of course not. Converting to Buddhism is something that you and I are willing to do. How can you force yourself to drink water?" Li Qingshan's face was immediately filled with suspicion. Just a few days ago, his head was almost crushed. Abbot Yangon felt a little awkward. He explained, "At that time, I still saw you as half an enemy. So, what difference does it make now?" Abbot Yangon said sternly, "Now, I know that you are fated with Buddha." Li Qingshan said, "Those words sound familiar to me. You might not believe it, but I received a revelation from Buddha while I was unconscious." Abbot Yangon raised his index finger. He pointed upwards. Li Qingshan was shocked. This was not the doomsday prophecy of those evil cultists in his previous life. It could be true. If it was true, then it would really be the end of the world. He asked carefully, Buddha personally descended to the mortal world. How could that be? Abbot Yangon laughed. Buddha spoke to you? No. Abbot Yangon shook his head. Buddha told you my name? No. What kind of revelation is this? Li Qingshan's heart returned to his stomach. This bald donkey was just bluffing. Abbot Yangon's face was intoxicated. Because of this, it is called a revelation. Otherwise, Buddha's true appearance is not something that we can see. Buddha's mantra is something that we can bear. Li Qingshan grinned. Fanatics were really disgusting. You're not dreaming, are you? It's similar to a dream. For example, Dream Omen, the path of great freedom, and Mahayana Buddhism are completely incompatible, so you can continue dreaming. I'll take my leave. Li Qingshan cupped his hands and was about to leave. Wait, the revelation I received wasn't just in a dream, it was also on your body. Abbot Yangon pointed at Li Qingshan with his finger that was pointing at the sky. Li Qingshan's heart trembled. He felt uncomfortable and couldn't help but look at himself. What do I have on my body? You have a merciful heart. Li Qingshan laughed out loud. I've done so many bad things in my life. Before I came, I beat up tens of thousands of people. But none of them were seriously injured. The ground was littered with soldiers lying on the ground. Military doctors went to and fro, treating them. They found out that most of them had light injuries, and in the end, they were just broken bones. With the medical methods of the cultivation path, they would recover quickly. Of course, Li Qingshan held back. If not, he would have blown someone up with a single punch, and the ground would have turned into a river of blood. However, Chao Tianjiao would definitely come to stop him. He wouldn't be able to play to his heart's content, and in the end, he would be punished by military law. Li Liehua had something on him. He didn't pretend to be a good person and said calmly, I just had some misgivings. Abbot Yangon asked, if you don't have those misgivings, will you go on a killing spree? Li Qingshan was slightly stunned and shook his head. Of course not. They only said a few bad things about me behind my back. There's no need to kill them. Abbot Yangon said cheerfully, in your eyes, they are still people. A trace of pity appeared in his eyes, and in the eyes of many cultivators, they are no longer people, not to mention cultivators. In the eyes of many mortals, they are no longer people. Ah, a merciful heart. Li Qingshan was silent for a moment. Then, do you know how many innocent people I have killed? If necessary, I will still kill. He felt that it was somewhat sad and ironic. If he had a merciful heart, then wouldn't a certain head of state be a Buddha? Buddha has a saying, put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. Li Qingshan was even more disdainful. This is called killing to prove one's Tao. Good people can't become Buddha, but bad people can. Oh, I understand. People who hold the butcher's knife are still strong enough after all. As long as they are willing to convert to Buddhism, they can immediately become high-level thugs and contribute to Buddhism. Of course, they are more useful than those weak and easy-to-bully good people. It seems that I still have to kill more people in the future. At this point, his face was full of ridicule, completely ignoring that he was in the Pure Land Temple, facing Arhut Urgwa, who was stronger than him. Not really. Turning into a small alley, he took out sets of armor from his Sumeru ring. These were all standard military equipment that he had bought from the quartermaster department for the sake of the doppelganger formation plan. Soon, one after another, Li Qingshan came out of the alley and dispersed into Black Cloud City. He wanted to know who else dared to speak ill of him. In the small tavern, a few soldiers discussed how the crawling general, Li Qingshan, had wreaked havoc in the military drill grounds with their spittle flying everywhere. Just as they were getting carried away, a lowly soldier rushed over while chanting, "Long live Li Qingshan!" He punched and kicked them, drinking all their alcohol along the way. As Li Qingshan's cultivation gradually recovered, the number of thought doppelgangers also increased. There were quite a few people who spoke ill of him. Hundreds of such incidents happened every day. Everyone in the city called it making a ruckus with Li Qingshan. Chao Qianju was completely speechless. All the generals demanded that he be severely punished because it was too degrading and made them lose face. However, it was better to prevent the public from speaking out than to prevent a river from flowing. Li Qingshan's shameless behavior was soon countered by the soldiers. Many people went to the street to curse and fight with his doppelgangers. They also set up all kinds of ambushes and sneak attacks. Sometimes, as soon as he rushed out, he was surrounded by dozens of fully armed and orderly soldiers. Then it would be a chaotic battle. However, as long as no commandant or brigade commander intervened, Li Qingshan wouldn't do anything himself. After all, the number of doppelgangers was limited. Sometimes he didn't have enough time to help. Unfortunately, one of his doppelgangers was killed and left behind a suit of armor. Li Qingshan didn't care about such a small loss. He didn't feel ashamed when he was defeated by the soldiers. Instead, he enjoyed it. Unconsciously, the ape-demon transformation began to change. To be continued. Chapter 1473. Snow fluttered in the wind. Li Qingshan stood cross-legged on top of the limestone tower. His eyes were bright, and his lips were curled up like an ape. The ape-demon transformations technique was ape-demon moon reaching emptiness. The origin of the ape-demon's power was also emptiness, although this emptiness was not the real emptiness. Only emptiness could contain the earth, fire, wind, and water to form a world of its own. Ox, tiger, turtle, and phoenix returned to their respective positions. Qilin walked, and plants grew. The importance of the ape-demon moon-reaching art was self-evident, especially now that the ape-demon transformation was stuck at the 4th level. Due to the lack of emptiness, all other transformations could not surpass it, apart from the Qilin transformation, which could be improved due to its lower cultivation. The other transformations could not even unleash their original power. The small world was still in its embryonic form. Once the ape-demon transformation broke through this shackle and reached the 5th level, not only would all the suppressed transformations be restored, but it would also mean that a brand new small world would be completely formed. It would no longer be restricted by the ape-demon transformation. All the supernatural powers would be restored, and his power would increase by more than 10 times. And this was nothing. The ox-demon transformation and tiger-demon transformation that had been dormant for a long time could easily break through to the 6th level. Then he would comprehend new supernatural powers, and his power would increase by more than 10 times. At that moment, even he could not imagine what kind of power he would possess. Thus, he had an idea. The Book of Freedom had another breakthrough, and he comprehended a new move out of thin air. Li Qingshan tilted his head and thought for a long time. This ape-demon transformation is too unreliable. To a certain extent, the ape-demon transformation was more difficult than the Qilin transformation. It could not be outsmarted or outmaneuvered. It all depended on one's temperament. If one did not change from stupidity and kept the moon in his heart, he would be able to advance triumphantly without any effort. Otherwise, it would be futile no matter how much effort he put in and meditated. But it's okay. My temperament is very good. Let me eat some snow to calm myself down. Li Qingshan squatted down and made a snowball. She rubbed a snowball and took a bite. Crunch, crunch. He seemed to have been startled by the sound. The window of the limestone tower suddenly opened. Hu Jigang poked his head out and roared, "Li Qingshan, get out of here!" There were many gray stone towers in Black Cloud City. As the residence of the generals, it was clear that this wasn't the one he was in. "It's you." Li Qingshan glanced at Hu Jigang, then grabbed a pile of snow and rubbed it into a strip. Then he coiled it into a plate. "Look, what's this?" Hu Jigang's eyes widened. He thought that he was referring to something else. "It's a snake? Idiot, it's shit, eat shit." Li Qingshan suddenly extended his arm and slapped the shit on Hu Jigang's face. Taking advantage of the situation, he leaped onto another tower, his laughter echoing from afar. Hu Jigang was lying on his back on the ground. His face was so red that it melted the snow. Blood was flowing out of his nose. The snowball that Li Qingshan had made was naturally harder than a rock. However, he did not chase after them for revenge. Instead, he trembled. In other people's eyes, it was just a mischievous slap. But how could he be so cooperative as to be a clown? That slap gave him the feeling of a huge avalanche. It was overwhelming and filled his field of vision. Not only could he not resist it, but he also had nowhere to run. At that moment, he almost thought that he was going to be slapped to death. But in the end, only his nose was bleeding, and he even felt lucky to have escaped death. This kid is really so strong. He found it hard to accept. He was a well-known figure in Black Cloud City, but he was so vulnerable. And what was most unacceptable was that this kid was far from his image of a strong man. How could a strong man rub snow into shit and slap it on someone's face? It was only a matter of time before he broke through the ape-demon transformation. Li Qingshan pressed his forehead. This should be the Book of Freedom. No, the strongest move of the Way of Freedom. It doesn't seem to be something that I can comprehend at my current level. He couldn't help but look in the direction of the Pure Land Temple, although he had lost the great Freedom Demon statue, which weakened many of his spells. This move alone was enough to make up for it. Hey, who cares? Tomorrow is the competition. I'll give it a try. The sun and the moon shuttled back and forth in the dark clouds. The sky darkened and lit up again. Li Qingshan looked down at the Black Cloud City. There was a winding canyon which looked like a giant dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It suddenly expanded under Black Cloud City like a dragon's head. This was the only way to attack Black Cloud City, and it had gone through countless bloody battles. This empty space was not formed naturally, but the result of war. On both sides of the canyon were jagged rocks of strange shapes, which formed a natural lookout. It was also a tradition that the competition would be held here for many years. At this time, millions of soldiers had gathered. The mountains and plains were filled with people, but they were orderly. The fierce Inferno Legion and the Xuanwu Legion stood on both sides of the canyon. Chao Tianhua shouted, "Li Qingshan, come here." His voice reverberated in the canyon, and the millions of soldiers were in an uproar. Then they heard a reply, "He's here." Everyone looked up at the sky. A black shadow fell from the sky, and with a loud bang, rocks flew everywhere, landing in the middle of the canyon. A whistle came from somewhere, and laughter spread out like ripples echoing in the canyon. The atmosphere was a bit unusual. Someone shouted, "General crawling on the ground, come and hit me." Li Qingshan pointed at the crowd. "I see you. Just you wait." The crowd roared with laughter. However, this laughter was no longer mocking or malicious. It was more like a taunt to an old friend. As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. His strength to defeat the millions of soldiers, his courage to admit defeat, his leniency, and even his arrogant and domineering attitude won the hearts of the crowd. Most importantly, he didn't treat them like ants, nor did he pretend to be close to them. Li Qingshan also laughed. He thought back to the time when he was commanding the Azura army in the 5 continents world, Chao Tianjiao, and Li Liehua looked at each other across the canyon. Chapter 1474. Li Qingshan looked down at the ground, motionlessly. Millions of eyes wandered back and forth between him and the demonic beast, marveling at the size of the demonic beast and secretly sweating for him. Even the generals did not have absolute confidence in defeating this demonic beast. Although the demonic beast did not have intelligence, it was unusually crazy. In this canyon where there was not much room to maneuver, they had to face it head-on. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, they not only had to win this battle, but they had to win beautifully to boost morale and strengthen the army. Taking a step back would be a humiliation. Why isn't he going up? Is he afraid? No, impossible. This kid isn't even afraid of the 2 corps commanders. Only Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao did not even look at the demonic beast. Their eyes only fell on Li Qingshan. They did not doubt that he would win this battle, but how would he win? Thinking back, after so long of conflict, they had never seen him go all out. This was also a strange thing. In order to test Li Qingshan's strength, this demonic beast was carefully selected by Chao Tianjiao. It was a powerhouse among the demon emperors. Come on, let me see what kind of tricks you have. In an instant, a huge shadow shrouded Li Qingshan. A bloody wind blew in his face, and his black hair fluttered. Li Qingshan raised his head slightly and saw a huge mouth full of fangs. He raised his right hand and casually drew a line from his forehead to his eyebrows. A vertical eye suddenly opened. It was dark and deep, trembling like a flame as it stared at the demonic beast. The magical beast trembled. Its eyes, which had been filled with madness and bloodlust, were now filled with fear. It did its best to stop its huge body and run far away from this terrifying man, especially those terrifying eyes. But it was too late. A black flame shot out. Before the demonic beast could even let out a cry, its huge body disintegrated and turned into dust. It was blown away by the wind from Li Qingshan's side. The canyon was dead silent. Only the whistling of the wind could be heard. Even Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao were shocked. Yangon was especially shocked. Not long ago, he was almost killed by the same move. Although the difference in power was huge, the essence was completely the same. World-extinguishing divine fire. Has he actually comprehended the Tao of great freedom to such an extent? Li Qingshan retracted his vertical eye and looked at Chao Tianjiao. The corners of his mouth rose. That's it. Chao Tianjiao's expression was grave. This move was enough to threaten her. Perhaps she really should let him stay in Yaozhu's 100-herb garden to grow vegetables. Li Liehua cultivated the heavenly book of raging flames, and with raging flames as its name, he felt it even more deeply. He closed his eyes and silently comprehended this kind of fire. There was no need to even mention the generals. In particular, those who had offended Li Qingshan in front of him in the past. Feeling a chill run down his spine, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. Every year, the opening battle of the grand martial competition of the entire army was a slaughter. It wasn't that there weren't any defeats, but there had never been such a thing. The powerful magical beast, transformed by the demon emperor, was actually obliterated in an instant. Many people didn't even understand what had happened. However, the goal of raising the morale of the army had indeed been achieved. "General is mighty," suddenly someone shouted loudly. In the blink of an eye, a tsunami of cheers rushed to the sky, reverberating between the mountains. Li Qingshan smiled and opened his arms, accepting the cheers. He was also very happy, not because he had defeated this stupid magical beast, but because among the human's techniques, there was finally a powerful technique that was comparable to his innate divine ability. Although this move had exhausted the power of the Een god, it was only the beginning. There would be a day when the world-extinguishing divine flame shot out from the vertical eye would burn a true powerful enemy. Still feeling unsatisfied, Li Qingshan asked loudly, "Who else?" The cheers gradually died down. No one answered. Chao Qianjiao said, "You can go down now." "I said I want to fight 10. Li Qingshan laughed. "I know there are many people who are unhappy with me. What? You only dare to gossip behind my back. Don't be afraid. I won't use this move." Chao Qianjiao sneered. "You can only use this move." After the shock, she realized that this move was very powerful, and it must have consumed a lot of energy. With Li Qingshan's realm, it was impossible for him to use it continuously. So what? There's still no one. Li Qingshan did not hide it. The pocket dimension was the real source of his power. His Een god was hiding in the pocket dimension, and its power was recovering rapidly. Amitba, let this poor monk have a taste of the crawling general's skill. The guardian monk's voice was like a bell descending from the sky. His upper body was half bent, and his muscles were tight, faintly emitting a golden light, like the guardian of the temple. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows and laughed. "You're courting death." "Huh," the guardian monk roared. His voice was like thunder, and a circle of golden ripples was released. The air around Li Qingshan and the sand and stones under his feet were all shaken up, and the wind and sand were everywhere. Li Qingshan's ears were buzzing, and his eyes flashed. The guardian monk pounced on him like a mad tiger, and a pair of big hands pierced through the wind and sand, holding his shoulders tightly. Li Qingshan felt a pressure, as if he had met his natural enemy. His eyes looked over the head of the guardian monk, and saw a Luohan appeared behind him. The Luohan had a face full of curly beard, and his clothes were half open, and he was riding a fierce tiger. The Pure Land sect did not rely on themselves, but borrowed the power of the gods. The Luohan that the guardian monk worshipped gave him boundless power, and no one could stop him. Luohan subduing the tiger. The guardian monk angrily exerted force, but Li Qingshan did not move an inch. Instead, his smile became wider. This was the so-called showing off in front of an expert. The guardian monk's expression changed, and he felt like he was shaking a mountain. Not to mention a corner of his strength, even his determination was shaken. Crouching tiger Luohan. Li Qingshan stretched out his arms and hugged the waist of the guardian monk. With a pull of his arms, he pulled the guardian monk up from the ground. The guardian monk's face turned red, and his waist felt like it was going to be broken. His bones creaked, and his vision became blurry. The crouching tiger Luohan behind him also disappeared. "You're not good enough to compete with me in strength." Li Qingshan did a fall down, and the guardian monk's head was planted into the ground. It was still one move, and this move was clearly seen by everyone. It was not a particularly brilliant move, but rather it was to let the opponent make the first move, and then use absolute strength to crush it, and once again shock the audience. Li Qingshan said, "Next." Old Hu will fight you." Hu Jigang jumped out. It was one thing to not win, but it was another to be scared to the point that he did not dare to fight. Once he had fear, it would definitely affect his cultivation. But he kept a very far distance from Li Qingshan and thought to himself, "This kid's physique is strong. Fighting him in close combat is simply courting death. Wait for my Een spirit to come out, and I'll use spells to fight him." Looking around, he did not see any trace of Li Qingshan. His heart trembled, and his eyes widened. Finally, he saw a blurry figure, and it was already within 10 steps of him. He was shocked and did not dare to use his Een spirit to come out. He quickly pulled out his sword and prepared to attack instead of defend, but he felt his waist tighten. It's over. With a bang, Li Qingshan fell again. Although the illusion evasion technique was weakened, it was still not a problem to bully such an opponent. Chapter 1475. The sun was high up in the sky, and the sunlight was slanting down. White snow and icy rocks were sparkling. Li Qingshan had planted another big onion. Cheers surged like waves. The soldiers couldn't care less about anything else. All they could see was his naked strength. The generals had thought of all kinds of ways to restrain him, thinking that they could overwhelm him by fighting him continuously. However, he broke through them with brute force, and the more he fought, the stronger he became. Who else? Li Qingshan brushed the dust off his hands. His exhaustion was gone, and the demonic ape was ready to make a move. He was close to the critical point. However, no one responded. The generals had almost been beaten up by him. The remaining female generals of the Xuanwu army were worried that Li Qingshan would not give them face and beat them up. Now, they simply gave up. They discussed with each other. No wonder he's so daring. He's so skilled. This strength is enough to show disdain for all the myriad nature sects' inner disciples. I heard that he has just passed the fourth heavenly tribulation. Not simple at all. What, is the old woman also in love? Hee, I really want to bite him now. Chao Tianjiao glanced at them, and they all fell silent. They looked at each other and smiled. Li Qingshan, you can go down now. Li Qingshan asked with a smile. Am I the champion? Chao Tianjiao rolled her eyes. You are the champion. The champion was the champion of the three armies. It was originally a competition among the generals, so of course he was the well-deserved champion. Okay, Li Qingshan jumped and flew toward Chao Tianjiao. Chao Tianjiao frowned and clenched her fists. He flew past her and came to the female generals behind her. He said with a smile, "Who wants to bite me?" The female generals didn't dare to answer him. Chao Tianjiao exuded a murderous aura. She clenched her teeth and said word by word, "Do you want to die?" Li Qingshan laughed aloud. With a single leap, he vanished from Black Cloud City. The tournament was finally over. No one in Black Cloud City dared to look down on the crawling general anymore. As for the champion, Li Qingshan, naturally, it was another contribution. On the list of versatility, Li Qingshan's ranking rose once again, and he was now in the middle of the inner disciples, causing another round of exclamations in the square. He was like a rising star. No one could stop him. Luan Ming Fangle Tian looked through the floor-to-ceiling window and clicked his tongue in wonder. Dark, it's really dark. I'm afraid those guys' faces have already turned black. Pai Yangqiu raised his glass and smiled. I really want to see their expressions now. Even eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister couldn't do anything to him. I really have to hand it to him. Commissariat General, the true disciples who had sent Li Qingshan to the battlefield had gathered together. Their expressions were a little ugly. Guxing spread his hands. You want me to think of a way, but what can I do? If those two couldn't suppress him, who else could? If he becomes a true disciple, how will we get along with each other in the future? The true disciples looked at each other in dismay, feeling a little annoyed. Heavens! Spirit Venerable Guihai had been paying attention to Li Qingshan's news all the time. Every time he did something, it seemed to be unexpected, but also reasonable. He was related to those great sages. It would be strange if he didn't do something. He repeatedly pondered the message that old man of heavenly books sent from the ninth heaven. There were only 4 short words. Wait and see. He calculated for a long time, but still failed to figure out the meaning behind these 4 words. He could only follow the surface meaning and wait and see. Master is in charge of the imperial study for the celestial emperor. He has sharp ears and eyes, and is very knowledgeable. It's not something a spirit immortal like me can understand. Forget it. It's useless to think too much. I'll just obey. This was the gap between realm and status. No matter how many books he read, he could not make up for it. But that kid is on the battlefield. No one will send me books to read again. In the herb garden, it was still a scene of birds singing and flowers fragrant. The breeze was gentle, and it was full of spring. A golden-red phoenix stood high on a gold-leafed Bodhi tree and sang. Flocks of spirit birds flew here and there along with his clear and melodious song. He had already gone through 4 heavenly tribulations. With his extraordinary talent and accumulation, the process could be said to be without danger. After that, he took on the job left behind by Li Qingshan. Although he did not know any cloning techniques, there was an ancient saying, "100 birds pay homage to the phoenix." He was born to be able to command birds. He especially bought some spiritual birds from the spiritual beast garden. With his experience as the king of feather people and king of mutants, he could be said to be able to command calmly. He also played a part in Li Qingshan's climb up the list of versatility. Wan Yaozhu looked at this scene and teased, "Jiu Air, he's much more useful than you." The 9-colored deer said, "Humph, then why don't you change your mount?" Speaking of mounts, Wan Yaozhu inexplicably thought of Li Qingshan again. Her face turned slightly red, and she sighed in her heart. That's a more suitable place for him. I hope he and eldest senior sister can forget about the past. Li Qingshan. Chao Tianjiao's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, causing the temperature in the room to plummet. Eldest senior sister, why are you here?" A woman's voice came from inside the bed. Impressively, it was the female general who wanted to bite Li Qingshan during the tournament. After the end of the tournament, Li Qingshan continued to wander around the city looking for an opportunity to break through to the 5th layer of demonic ape. However, no one challenged him anymore. This kind of thing could not be forced, so he could only give up. However, it was not without gains. High official Li, who had mastered the 5 great skills of Pan Donkey and Deng Xiaoxian, found a few gentle places. What's the matter now?" Li Qingshan opened his eyes and turned around lazily. The blanket slid off his body, revealing his robust body. He was completely naked. "Follow me, I have a mission." Chao Tianjiao turned a blind eye to him and turned around to leave. Li Qingshan immediately got up, put on his clothes, and followed. He did not miss the gentle places behind him at all. The female general giggled and said, "Little devil, come and play again when you have time." "I know." In the black tortoise hall, Chao Tianjiao went straight to the point. "I want you to go and investigate the cold blood pass again." Chapter 1476. Li Qingshan returned to the gray stone tower, little, and was still cultivating. Amidst the samadhi flame of white bone that bloomed like a lotus flower, she was sometimes stunning and sometimes eerie. His eyes were gentle and unmoved. After watching for a while, he quietly returned to the bottom of the tower and sat cross-legged, leaving his body behind. His Yin spirit floated out of his body and came to Xuanwu Hall to meet up with Chao Tianjiao. "Come." Chao Tianjiao opened her arms and opened her mind. Li Qingshan's Yin spirit rushed forward and merged with her. "How do you feel?" Chao Tianjiao waved her arms, feeling as if she was wearing a strange armor. "Nice figure," Li Qingshan teased. Chao Tianjiao's expression changed. Her yang spirit shone brightly, and her yin spirit felt as if it was being cut by a knife. "Just kidding. Calm down, calm down." Although her Yin spirit was attached to her body, it was only equivalent to wearing a coat. It could not really touch her body. It was still her own Yang spirit. However, both the coat and the coat were fitted to her body and could still outline her good figure. The compliment came from the heart, but the other party did not seem to appreciate it. I can tolerate you on normal days, but I will not allow you to play tricks on the battlefield. Otherwise, don't blame my army for being merciless. Chao Tianjiao's face was stern. In fact, she already knew what kind of person he was. She was not really angry, but just wanted to give him a show of strength. She also wanted to test him and prepare for the upcoming trip to the demonic area. She cultivated the black tortoise scripture and walked the path of the black tortoise, which was the path of the Zhenwu Great Emperor. She was the ninth heaven's demon-destroying grandmaster who presided over the war against the demonic area. Her Yang spirit was formed by absorbing the cold, murderous aura of the 7 constellations in the north. It was extremely murderous. Ordinary Yin spirits would be injured if they got close to her, let alone attached to her body. The fact that he could withstand her aura meant that she could move more freely and could cast some spells calmly. This was a good thing to be happy about. All right, whatever you say. I'm just an invisibility cloak. Li Qingshan sighed and made a mental note to think about how he would take revenge in the future. Of course, there were also some very erotic and violent scenes. It's good that you understand. Chao Tianjiao smiled. She turned around and jumped down the cliff. The rock wall was undulating, and the mountain wind whistled past her ears. She ignored Li Qingshan's complaints. He gradually activated the power of the Yang spirit, which shone like stars. Wei Su, with a low shout, the 7 stars in the Yang spirit shone, one of which was particularly dazzling. Specks of light condensed into scissor-like wings and tail feathers. Like a silver swallow, it streaked across the dawn sky and flew towards the infernal domain. Li Qingshan gained a deeper understanding of her strength. This is the heavenly tome of Black Tortoise. If I were to face him head-on, I'm definitely not his match. I'm afraid I won't even be able to block a single move from him. I can only take it head-on. Even if he had the living soil of the 9 heavens, it would be useless. No matter how powerful his fists were, it would be useless if he could not land a hit, unless he could use a formation to trap her to death like what he had done to Ao Xian. But that couldn't be considered a head-on confrontation. He was also too ambitious. He had just passed the 4th heavenly tribulation not long ago, but he was going to compete with someone at the peak of the 5th heavenly tribulation, and the one who was the best at fighting. Of course, he felt that his strength was not enough. Forget it. I'll observe carefully first and prepare for the future battle. Chao Tianjiao clearly guessed what he was thinking. She deliberately let him understand the gap between them to undermine his confidence. The path they were on, what they couldn't lack was confidence. The 2 of them, who were at odds with each other, flew over the mountains, the frozen land, and the ice fields, and arrived at the border of the 2 domains. She stopped using her magic and descended from the sky. She restrained her aura and said rudely, "Boy, hurry up. Don't hold me back." "Which leg did I hold you back? Are you a dog?" Li Qingshan was furious. He used the illusion demon escape, and a wave of light flowed around. A brilliant light flowed and gradually disappeared. "If you use magic again, I won't be able to hide. Cut the crap." Chao Tianjiao lightly stepped on the ground. She flew forward without raising a speck of dust. She didn't slow down at all. Why can't I feel the rejection from the demon domain? The demon domain, which had always been the most terrifying enemy of human cultivators, seemed to have suddenly disappeared. She carefully sensed it and found that the invisible repulsive force was still there. As she went deeper into the demon domain, it became stronger and stronger, but it flowed off her body like water. Li Qingshan didn't answer. He obediently wore his invisibility cloak and thought, "Humph, it's not just rejection. The last time I came, the demon domain welcomed me so much. If I wasn't merciful, I would have broken into Black Cloud City and fuck you 100 times. Hey, boy, don't tell me you're really a spy sent by the demon domain." Chao Tianjiao seemed to feel some kind of malice from him. She stopped and became suspicious. "Hee, Qiong Qi asked me to bring you a message. As long as you surrender to the demon domain," Chao Tianjiao couldn't help but laugh. "Qiong Qi, kid, you sure are bold." Qiong Qi was a true god in terms of battle prowess. He was probably even above the elder of Heavenly Book. He was far too far away from her, a young soul cultivator, let alone a measly in-soul cultivator. She mocked, "Then who are you to Qiong Qi?" "Qiong Qi is my mount," Li Qingshan boasted shamelessly. If he had won that bet, he could indeed subdue Qiong Qi under the blood oath of the Nether River. "Kid, you sure are funny." Chao Tianjiao pursed her lips. She no longer had the slightest doubt. There was no demon folk bold enough to slander a demon god like that. "As long as you surrender to the demon domain, I guarantee you a lifetime of glory and wealth. There'll be plenty of gold. In your dreams, you traitor. Captain, don't shoot. Can you shut up?" Chao Tianjiao could not take it anymore. "I can't." Li Qingshan was fearless, as they had already entered the demon domain now. Chao Tianjiao stopped and sensed again. As expected, she was not rejected, so she could not help but calm down. With that, the risk of exposure was greatly reduced. In a good mood, she ignored his jokes. "Heck, kid, you've got some skill." Chapter 1477. Chao Tianjiao had her reasons. Ever since she joined the army, she had been through thousands of battles. She had personally killed more than 200,000 or 300,000 demon folk. She only mocked Li Qingshan for not having experienced this, which was why he was so careful. It had to be mentioned that even when the battle was at its most intense, there were only a handful of demon emperors in Cold Blood Pass. They could not take down Black Cloud City, and it would be pointless even if there were more. It would instead drag down the other battles. Now that she had Li Qingshan's in spirit to fend off the laws of the demon domain, she had one less major problem to worry about. She had infiltrated silently again. Even if there were a handful of demon emperors, she was confident she could escape. Chao Tianjiao climbed up the pass silently. As far as the eye could see, it was still ruins, exactly the same as the illusion Li Qingshan had demonstrated back then. Li Qingshan felt that something was amiss. He tried to persuade her again. "You said you wanted to take a look. You've already taken a look now, so you can go back." "Cut the nonsense." Chao Tianjiao was as light as a feather, drifting into the pass. Li Qingshan choked. He felt suffocated. Since he could not persuade her, he could only let her be, just in case he humiliated himself. God damn it. Even good advice can't persuade a damned ghost. As soon as Chao Tianjiao landed on the ground, she stepped on a red thread that had appeared out of thin air. The red thread was as red as blood. It was not tangible, but it trembled slightly. Immediately, thousands of red threads appeared in the air, crisscrossing with one another and affecting the entire pass. Rumble! The ruins shook, and 12 stone pillars rose up from the ground. Every single pillar was engraved with the totem of a demon god. 12 demon emperors stood on the top of the 12 totem pillars, either sneering viciously or emotionlessly as they gazed at Chao Tianjiao in the formation. Surging demon qi blanketed the surroundings, filling up the pass. Li Qingshan had seen those red threads not long ago. They were the spirit threads that formed the formation, and he had actually seen this formation before. 12 Citadel Demon Formation of the Evil. Chao Tianjiao gritted her teeth and roared in her heart, Li Qingshan, how dare you say you're not a spy? I'll fuck your mother. Li Qingshan was also angry. I've tried to persuade you again and again, but you didn't listen. Now you're blaming it on me? Come, let's see how you're going to survive. He was ambushed, and there was a strong enemy outside. With disloyalty in his heart, the situation was extremely critical. With a clang, Chao Tianjiao unsheathed her saber. In an instant, she had regained her composure. Recalling Li Qingshan's various performances, how could there be such an arrogant spy in the world? Frankly speaking, he said, I have wronged you. If you are not a spy, then accompany me to the death in battle. Seeing her so generous, Li Qingshan was momentarily speechless. He was too embarrassed to say, even if you die, I won't. Finally, he let out a long sigh. Sigh, why did you have to come? Chao Tianjiao said, I had an important mission, so I had to come. I ended up dragging you into this. The 12 demon emperors are gathered here. It's definitely not just to ambush me. They must be plotting against Black Cloud City. My extinguishing life lamp can be considered a warning to the sect. Bitch, do you still recognize me? Tu Wancheng let out a sinister laugh, feeling extremely gratified. Tu Wancheng, my saber didn't kill you. Do you dare fight me again? Chao Tianjiao pointed her saber at Tu Wancheng. Trapped in the 12 Citadel Demon Formation of the Evil, he was already in a hopeless situation. If he could kill a demon emperor, he might still have a chance of survival. At the very least, he would be able to drag someone down with him. His sharp edge was revealed, and his murderous intent surged. Tu Wancheng's face contorted. That saber strike had truly left a lingering fear in his heart. The other demon emperors seemed to be watching the show, not in a hurry to make a move. Naturally, Tu Wancheng wouldn't fall for it. He was just about to use vulgar words to humiliate Chao Tianjiao. An elderly demon emperor waved his hand, and Tu Wancheng immediately shut up. The elderly said earnestly, Fellow Taoist Chao, if you are willing to convert to the demon realm, there's still a way out. Not only will you become a demon emperor and be on equal footing with us, but if you can help us conquer Black Cloud City, it will be a great merit. Not only will you be blessed by heaven, but you will also be rewarded by the supreme gods. You might even be able to overcome the 6th heavenly tribulation and reach the demigod realm. The elderly's voice was hoarse and deep, but it had a strange charm that penetrated the eardrums and reached the bottom of the heart. He was even more amiable than Abbot Yangon, making people have no choice but to believe him. Li Qingshan and Chao Tianjiao immediately understood. As it turned out, that was what they were planning. Even if the 12 demon emperors worked together, they would struggle to destroy the Black Cloud Roar of Thunder formation, let alone the fact that there was a teleportation formation connected to the Myriad sect. They could summon over 10 true disciples to assist them at any time. If the first senior sister, Chao Tianjiao, acted as a mole, destroying these two formations would be a piece of cake. If the 12 demon emperors used this opportunity to strike, even an army of 1,000,000 would be at their mercy. Li Qingshan sneered. Karma really is a cycle of karma and retribution. You said I'm a spy from the demon realm. Now it's your turn. He did his best to block the demonic voice for her. Chao Tianjiao's mind cleared up. She was not annoyed by him. Instead, she found it strange. Even at a time like this, he's still in the mood to joke around. How bold of him. She did not wholeheartedly want to die here. She acted like she was in thought and said to the old man, I understand demon folk very well. They'll go back on their word, even if there's no benefit to them. How can I trust you?" The old man laughed aloud. "Do you think I'm one of those idiots, fellow? If you don't believe me, I can swear a blood oath on the Nether River." Chao Qianjiao sighed pretentiously. "The sect has shown me great kindness, so how can I go back on my word?" Li Qingshan thought, "This woman sure isn't simple-minded. She even knows how to stall for time. It's just a pity that her acting skills are far too exaggerated. If the path they took was to throw their lives away, regardless of the consequences when they encountered danger, they would have lost 100 lives. How could they have made it to where they were today?" Chapter 1478. Chaotic beings could not see or hear. They could not tell right from wrong, so they were chaotic and chaotic. The demon god of chaos was basically the embodiment of the will of the demon domain, as well as the most powerful demon god. However, due to their chaotic nature, not only were they ignorant and unable to tell right from wrong, but their thoughts could also change in the next moment. They were unable to carry out any long-term plans, nor were they able to gather allies effectively. As a result, their overall strength was the weakest. He was like a demonic beast among demon gods, a terrifying demon god beast. However, his strength could not be doubted. Meanwhile, the demon folk of the chaotic lineage were all natural demonic beings. They were extremely few in number, but they were extraordinarily powerful and unpredictable. As a result, when this old man called, Ingja became their commander without a doubt. They did not even dare to raise a fuss. Even to the demon domain, demon emperors were precious resources. They were no longer allowed to kill one another casually, or even the victor would be severely punished. Only the chaotic lineage was unrestrained, or in other words, restraints were useless, as chaos was their nature. No matter how wise this Sir Ingja seemed, his nature would definitely be chaotic. Even if he attacked them for no reason, they would not be surprised, nor would they be punished. Who wouldn't be afraid of a mad dog like that? Ingja's eyes were like chameleons, swiveling in different directions and taking in the expressions of all the demon emperors. The corners of his lips curled up, almost reaching his ears. That amiable face suddenly became strangely twisted. All the demon emperors lowered their heads, afraid to make eye contact with him. On my command, activate the formation. The demon emperors dared not tarry. The 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous immediately activated, and the 12 stone pillars lit up one by one. Surging demon chi blotted out the sky, crushing down layer by layer. Chao Qianjiao raised her head, but she could no longer see the demon emperors. Only the 12 demon gods gazed at her silently, as if they would never change. Meanwhile, she had become as insignificant as an ant. Any demon god only needed to extend a finger to crush her to pieces. True martial demon sweeping, the 7 mansions as one, the divine turtle as armor, the mysterious snake as soldier. Chao Qianjiao was fearless. She unsheathed her saber, and the 7 stars in her yang spirit shone brightly. Her whole body shone with divine light, making her look like a Valkyrie. Li Qingshan felt as if his Yin spirit was about to be sliced into pieces. He said angrily, "Do you want to kill me?" Didn't this old man want to recruit people to surrender and rebel? How could he turn hostile just like that? "Shut up." Chao Tianjiao's voice was cold and cruel, without a trace of human emotion, only a murderous aura. Ing's expression changed. In the boundless demon domain, there was not a single demon folk who did not hate or fear the Zhenwu Great Emperor, including the lineage of chaos. Since you're still cultivating the Xian Wu Dao, you're even more intolerable. Chaos descends. In an instant, the light from the 11 totem pillars dimmed and gathered at the totem pillar beneath Ing's feet. The totem of the chaos demon god suddenly moved. Its huge, round head had no eyes, ears, mouth, or nose. Four short, thick limbs protruded from its huge body. Its skin was pink like a baby's, but it was covered in veins and wrinkles. It was ugly and stupid. It crawled around the stone pillars stupidly, its head facing Chao Tianjiao and Li Qingshan. Suddenly, it opened its abyss-like mouth and let out a cry that sounded like a baby's cry, but it was 100 or 1,000 times sharper. It leaped out of the stone pillar. It lunged at them. Kill! Chao Tianjiao did not retreat. Instead, she advanced and swung her saber to meet it. The scorching Xian Wu saber aura contained the strength and willpower that she had cultivated her entire life. Even Li Qingshan's Yin spirit was almost torn to pieces. He could not help but praise. Nice, but it's useless. The chaos demon god swallowed her in one gulp, and the gaping mouth immediately closed up. Everything returned to silence. The 12 demon emperors had worked together to set up the 12 citadel demon formation of the evil. They were still in the demon domain, so this was already an overwhelming force. All resistance and struggles became meaningless. Even if they risked their lives, they would not be able to harm a single hair on the other party. The demon emperors looked at each other. Didn't they just say that they would not kill her? Why did they change their minds in the blink of an eye? But no one dared to ask. In any case, the chaos lineage was a gathering place for lunatics. Ing just stood with his hands behind his back, and he became that kind old man again. Fellow Taoists, don't worry. She will surrender very soon. He pointed at the 12 citadel demon formation of the evil, and the chaos demon god. S huge body shrank and condensed. Demonic chi surged over, and it was as thick as black asphalt. It formed a black egg with a hint of red. This is a chaos demon egg. A demon emperor cried out. At least there's someone who knows. Ingzhi nodded. She cultivates the Xian Wu Dao, so there's no way she will surrender. But she's not. He paused and pointed to the sky. All the demon emperors understood. He was referring to Great Emperor Zhenwu. He continued, in this chaos demon egg, all thoughts will be distorted and turned into chaos. Without the skin, what will the hair attach to? Willpower, persistence, and faith will all become worthless. Tu Wancheng, don't you want revenge? If she comes out again, she might become the next one. Really? Tu Wancheng was pleasantly surprised. Even if Chao Tianjiao died in battle, he wouldn't be able to lay a finger on her. The only way to vent his anger was to kill a few demonic beasts. Now that he saw hope, he immediately perked up. As long as you're not afraid of her suddenly killing you in bed. Tu Wancheng trembled, and his body went limp again. All the demon emperors laughed. Old Tu, go ahead and do it. We'll support you from the side. Then I'll have to trouble you. Tu Wancheng cupped his hands humbly. Let's take turns to kill this bitch. We won't let our brothers fail. A bunch of idiots. Ing just suddenly cursed. Why aren't you preparing to attack Black Cloud City? You're all laughing like stupid pigs. The laughter came to a halt. The demon emperors were furious, but they dared not say anything. All they could do was stay far away from this madman. Ingzhi's anger vanished as quickly as it had come. In the blink of an eye, he gazed at the chaos demon egg in the center of the formation deeply again. A cultivator who practices the path of the black tortoise returns to chaos and becomes a demon folk in the end. What a wonderful irony to the desireless heavenly palace. He. The demonic senses in the chaos demon egg twisted and chaotically, surging over like the tide. Chao Tianjiao swung her blade a few times, but she was swallowed by the endless chaos in the blink of an eye. She dared not waste any more strength. Li Qingshan said, "That old bastard wants to turn you into a demon folk." I know, Chao Tianjiao said indifferently. What do I do? Die. Chao Tianjiao did not even feel the slightest fear. Instead, she felt a sense of relief. Don't forget, we still have a 30-year promise. If you die, who will I go to for revenge? Li Qingshan felt very wronged, and very reluctant to accept this. If she died, his Yin spirit definitely would not survive either. He could not help but think back to that afternoon when he practiced the innate method of practicing qi many years ago, followed by the Gui water method of condensing qi, the arts of the boundless ocean, the demon suppression statuary, the demon war statuary, the extreme emperor's record of destruction, the extreme emperor's record of scripture, and finally, the heavenly tome of freedom, qi practitioner, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, in spirit. After all the painstaking effort, he had raised it to such an extent, yet because of a stupid woman, it was gone just like that. Chao Tianjiao, was finally moved. Is there something wrong with your head? Chapter 1479. You're the one who's crazy. Chao Tianjiao closed her eyes and ignored him. She focused on using the black tortoise tome, resisting the invasion of the demonic thoughts with cold determination. Even in such a desperate situation, she didn't waver at all. Li Qingshan couldn't help but admire her extraordinary willpower. Even when he was between life and death, he often felt great fear. But this often stimulated his will to live, and he would defeat strong enemies with courage. But she didn't seem to be afraid at all. Was it really because she had more experience on the battlefield? But she could give up her life, but he still couldn't give up his Yin spirit. He asked, don't you have any other way? For example, ask for help from the Myriad sect. His main body stayed in Black Cloud City, so he could ask for help. At this time, he didn't care about exposing this secret. But the strange thing was, she didn't even have this plan. Was it because she couldn't or didn't want to ask for help? Chao Tianjiao said, if a demon emperor is trapped in Black Cloud City, will the demon realm come to help? Li Qingshan thought about it and sighed. Of course not. In the end, he overestimated her identity as the eldest senior sister. Even if the Myriad sect gathered all the true disciples, they might not be able to break the 12 citadel demon formation of the evil, and at least half of them would die here. She would definitely die in the formation, unless Spirit Emperor Guihai or the two sect masters came. But the higher the cultivation, the greater the rejection from the laws of the demon realm. And with such a big formation, the demon realm might have a backup plan. Even a human immortal might not be able to deal with it. The only thing for sure was that she was going to die. The demon emperors weren't stupid villains who talked too much. Once the situation went wrong, they would definitely activate the formation to kill her first. So, even if the Myriad sect knew she was trapped here, they wouldn't go deep into the demon realm and start a war in such a disadvantageous situation. This was the cruelty of war. Even the great senior sister of the sect, who had been flaunting her prowess, would be abandoned. But he didn't want to give up so easily. He absorbed the tide-like demonic aura and demonic thoughts into his Yin spirit. He began circulating the unfettered heavenly tome. In a sense, the chaos demon egg was a good place to cultivate the unfettered scripture. The demon emperors had invested a lot in order to demonize the Myriad sect's great senior sister. All kinds of resources. It had everything. Even though there were all types of chaos and distortions, the Tao of great freedom was ever-changing, so there was nothing to fear. Currently, his comprehension was greater than his cultivation, so he could swallow this portion of resources. Chao Tianjiao opened her eyes and calmed down. He was also astonished. This kid really has some skills. He can actually absorb demonic qi and use the resources of the demonic domain to cultivate. If he hadn't fallen here, he would have made great achievements in the war against the infernal domain in the future. It's not easy for him to persevere in his cultivation and help me resist the demonic thoughts. I've implicated him. Li Qingshan did not care about it. He circulated the unfettered heavenly tome in a frenzy, refining the rolling devil qi and the layers of devil psyche. Compared to Chao Tianjiao's calmness, his performance was close to madness. Yin Shun's expression kept changing. Anger, fear, greed, it was slowly becoming stronger and stronger. A cornered beast was fighting. Usually, he was worried that his Yin Shun would go berserk and lose control. He did not dare to be so unrestrained. Now, he had nothing to worry about. Anyway, this Yin Shun could not be taken back. If it went out of control, then so be it. He could just treat it as accumulating cultivation experience. Even if he refined his Yin Shun into a Yang Shun, which was basically impossible, he would not be able to escape from this 12-citadel demon formation of the evil. Unless his Yin Shun was completely demonized, then these demon emperors would not be afraid of him, who was of the same kind. But this was the most unacceptable result. He would rather self-destruct his Yin Shun. He was already prepared for this. However, he did not know whether it was because his understanding of the Tao of great freedom was too thorough, or because this state of mind was just right for cultivating the unfettered heavenly tome. He cultivated for a long time, but showed no signs of losing control. At such a meaningless moment, instead, he was advancing bravely and advancing at a tremendous pace. This was too ironic. Bastard. Chao Tianjiao thought that he was finally afraid. She mocked. If you were more honest, you would still be in the 100-herb garden watering the flowers and planting the trees. Why would you end up like this? Li Qingshan was furious. You still dare to say that? Chao Tianjiao was not afraid of him. I'm going to die, and I don't dare to say a few words to you. You want to take revenge on me, and I still have to settle the score with you. That day, I was only protected by your words. You don't have to wait for another 30 years. Go and die now. Good. Very good. Li Qingshan was so angry that he laughed. He was overflowing with viciousness. I want you to die a horrible death. As he continued to cultivate, he extracted a burning thought from the chaotic and twisted demonic thoughts and transferred it into her body. Humph! Chao Tianjiao sneered. Is that all you've got? She did not even need to guard her mind. Her body had already cut off the red dragon and cut off all evil thoughts. The Yang Shin was condensed from the cold, murderous aura of the 7 constellations in the north. It was cruel and cold, and naturally restrained all demonic thoughts. I see. Li Qingshan suddenly understood why she and Li Liehua were so strong, far surpassing the Chuolong, who was also a human emperor. The purer and more extreme the power, the faster it would improve, and the more destructive it would be. This was the case for the Heavenly Book of Fire and the Heavenly Book of Black Tortoise. However, the price to pay was that after reaching a certain realm, the path would become narrower and narrower, and eventually become a bottleneck that was difficult to break through. The synonym for pureness was extreme. What was more terrifying was that this pure power would corrode one's mind. Li Liehua was only slightly provoked by him, and he disregarded the sex rules to kill him. Was he born with a violent temperament, or was he swallowed and assimilated by the flames? Chao Tianjiao was able to be fearless in a desperate situation, but it was probably not a performance of courage. True courage was reflected in overcoming fear, and not simply being afraid of nothing. Back then, Gong Yuan walked such a path. Not only did she treat everyone cruelly, but she was also almost swallowed by the power of ruin's end. Pursuing power was to carry out one's will. If one was held hostage by power, he would not be far from qi deviation. On the surface, eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister seemed to be boundlessly glorious, but in reality, they were constantly being distorted by power. They had no choice but to use their extraordinary willpower to control this overly powerful and pure power. Thus, they had no choice but to dominate the battlefield, using slaughter to calm the turmoil in their hearts. But the more they used it, the faster the power backfired. If they could not break through the sixth heavenly tribulation and reach the human immortal realm, it was impossible for them to die of old age. They would either burn into a ball of fire or a ray of light. The three of us are quite similar. The more we want, the more we have to bear. It's very fair. However, if you really think that you can resist it with your willpower, then you are gravely mistaken. You are still a human after all. Yes, a woman. Li Qingshan laughed madly as he ignited even more flames, burning away her icy cold will. With a great devil like him helping the tyrant, the chaos demon egg finally started to show its power. To be continued. Chapter 1480. Light snow drifted through the air. 12 towering stone pillars stabbed into the depths of the demonic clouds. A huge chaos demon egg hovered in the air at the center, pulsating like a Ru Xian organ. Chao Qianjiao did not take Li Qingshan's little tricks to heart at all. She was like a eunuch who was not afraid of being seduced by beauty. She was only waiting for him to fail before mocking him viciously. There was chaos in the surroundings, as if there was a boundless world, yet it was indeed sealed up in this tiny space. These two completely opposite experiences did not seem out of place at all. It was as if she had experienced it somewhere before. At this moment, a strange warmth surged through her heart. It was a feeling she had not felt for a very long time, which made her heart skip a beat. She was rather in disbelief. Don't tell me this kid is definitely a spy from the demon domain. Even if he isn't. She was just about to scold Li Qingshan fiercely or just finish him off. There was a thump and her heart beat. She suddenly remembered that this was the feeling of being in her mother's womb. Crack. It was like a frozen lake cracking open, spilling out warm spring water and spreading out. Her memories were like a breached dam, unstoppable. She had also once been a little girl. Li Qingshan saw the lines on her valiant face suddenly soften. Her expression even became slightly infatuated, as if she had become a completely different person. Even people who were extremely familiar with her would be mistaken with a single glance. However, this was not the appearance of someone who had completely lost themselves in lust. Instead, she was like a regular person who was on the brink of death, recalling her entire life. Now, that's more like a person. Li Qingshan sighed slightly. Suddenly, he felt that although the demon folk were evil and twisted, they were more like a person from a certain perspective. Even the ugliest side of humanity was still a discussion about humanity at the end of the day. However, her willpower was the exact opposite. It was more like the icy cold light of the stars, beautiful but inhuman. With a thought, he channeled even more demonic thoughts into her. Fear, pain, sorrow, she frowned and thought about when she was over 3 years old. She had tripped over the doorsill and burst into tears. It was not because of pain, but because she had dirted her new clothes. It was a large, red, cotton-padded jacket. It was very warm. Grandma quickly picked her up and even kicked the doorframe a few times. She coaxed her softly and was very warm. However, this warmth made her shiver as she recalled the past. How I walk alone in the cold. No matter how cold it was, he couldn't stop. He abandoned all warmth and chased after the illusory cold stars in the winter night. Only in this way would the cold be easier to endure. Once he stopped, he would lose everything. However, at this moment, a chill surged out, almost making him shiver all over. But since he was already in a hopeless situation, he could finally stop and rest. With that in mind, the starlight dimmed. She no longer resisted the invasion of the demonic thoughts, and even took the initiative to accept them. Even if it was painful, she couldn't help but awaken these warm memories one by one. The warmth and coldness that had been accumulating for 1,000 years continuously converged and reflected off each other, gradually shaking her resolve. Her expression fluctuated, sometimes sad, sometimes happy, sometimes worried, sometimes afraid. She became more and more human, but also a little fragile. Li Qingshan suddenly realized that she was indeed an extremely beautiful woman. He could not help but admire the demon domain's methods. The reason why she would not surrender was not because of any debt of gratitude, but because the path she was walking on was one that absolutely could not be shaken by weakness. Otherwise, he would go berserk and be destroyed by his own power. However, they actually had a way to untie this knot, shaking her will and distorting her beliefs without causing her to go berserk. In a sense, it was even opening up a new path for her. Li Qingshan sank into thought. If this continues, I won't be able to survive. She might really choose to pledge allegiance to the demon domain and become a demon emperor. What should I do? Stop her? Sigh, what good is it to me if she becomes the demon emperor? I'm afraid I'm also affected by the demonic will. Activating the heavenly book of freedom, he shielded her from all demonic thoughts. Chao Qianjiao opened her eyes. Her cheeks were rosy, but she was still in a daze. She suddenly realized something and sincerely said, "Thank you." If it wasn't for him, she might have really turned into a demon. "You're welcome. It's not like you have a heart of stone." "Yes," Chao Qianjiao said faintly, "I really want to live." An unprecedented desire to survive surged in her fiery heart. Another deeper pain arose, and she couldn't help but clench her fists. Not only now, but she had already fallen into a desperate situation. She knew that the hope was slim, but she had to keep moving forward. Li Qingshan asked, "Are you going to pledge allegiance to the demon domain?" Chao Tianjiao's eyes gradually regained their firmness, but it was no longer influenced by power. She made a decision based on her own will. "Let's die together." The young spirit, once again, lit up with the cold starlight. She couldn't delay any longer, or the will to survive would overwhelm everything. "Wait, are you afraid?" "It doesn't matter. I'm a little afraid too. Don't worry, it won't hurt." Chao Tianjiao said in a comforting tone. The light of the Yang spirit became more and more intense. Li Qingshan asked, "Do you want to go through 6 heavenly tribulations?" "You have a way." Chao Tianjiao's eyes flashed. "Yes, but it's a narrow escape." "What way?" Chao Tianjiao believed him a little. Li Qingshan said faintly, "Karma Mudra." Chao Tianjiao was stunned for a moment. Then she sneered and said, "You're not lying to me, are you?" Li Qingshan said seriously, "Of course not. I'm just fooling you." If it had been in the past, Chao Tianjiao would have killed him without saying a word. This dog of a man who took advantage of others when they were in danger still wanted to take advantage of her at this time. However, encouraged by her will to survive, she decided to listen to him before killing him. "Go ahead. The way of black tortoise you walk is too pure and extreme, and it will gradually destroy your will. A slave of power is certainly not qualified to go through 6 heavenly tribulations and become a human immortal." Chao Tianjiao nodded. She had reached the peak of 5 heavenly tribulations a long time ago, which was not a big deal. As long as there were no accidents, the human emperor would eventually reach this step. However, most of them would never be able to break through the barrier between human and immortal, because the human emperor was the limit of a cultivator. They had to use the identity of a human to control an unprecedented huge power, which was bound to cause all kinds of problems and tribulations. Seeing that she had taken the bait, Li Qingshan continued to persuade her, "The Book of Freedom that I cultivate is the path of the Great Freedom Heaven. The sects that worship the Great Freedom Heaven are all called the Outer Way. One of them is called the Nature Sect, which is most proficient in the method of Karma Mudra. Maybe through Karma Mudra, I can help you control this power and wear down some of its sharpness." Chapter 1481. Li Qingshan added fuel to the fire. "I once had a dual cultivation partner. Her situation is very similar to yours. She borrowed the power of ruins and to cultivate, and almost suffered a backlash from it. In the end, through dual cultivation with me, she successfully controlled the power of ruins and set foot on the peak of life." There was not a single lie in what he said, but there were some inaccuracies. For example, he could help Gong Yuan suppress the power of ruins, and because of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. The two of them were natural partners. Although the black tortoise was half a turtle, it was probably not the same as a spirit turtle. As for whether the dual cultivation techniques of the School of Sex and Strength were effective or not, and how effective they were, he had no idea. Not long ago, he used the techniques of the Sacred Scripture School to offer sacrifices to the realm of freedom and almost failed several times. Chao Tianjiao mocked him habitually. "You had a dual cultivation partner before?" He. Li Qingshan was like a demon tempting a loyal maiden. With deep malice, he struck out one last time. "With your realm, you'll definitely attract the 6th heavenly tribulation once your cultivation improves. Even if you can't overcome it in the end, it'll be better than dying here sullenly." Chao Tianjiao pondered for a while before suddenly swinging her hand like she was swinging down a blade. "All right, I'll believe you this time. Ha! Senior sister, when have I ever disappointed you?" In Black Cloud City, under the gray stone tower, an innocent yet evil smile appeared on Li Qingshan's face. He was like a child who had successfully tricked an adult and succeeded in pulling a prank. "What do I need to do?" "Just listen to my instructions. First, please relax your mind. Of course, there's also the rest." Chao Tianjiao suddenly felt rather embarrassed. In this chaos demon egg, her willpower had already wavered a long time ago. However, she was not a wishy-washy person. Since she had made up her mind, she did not hesitate at all. She cooperated with him obediently. In that instant, A chill slid over her skin, from her face to her neck, chest to her abdomen. It greedily went past every inch of her skin, giving her goosebumps. She tensed and closed her eyes. 2 red clouds appeared on her cheeks. She bit her lips subconsciously and pretended to be indifferent. However, she sighed in her heart. How did I fall into such a situation? Is it really my turn to be unlucky? This jinx. Li Qingshan had successfully changed from an outer garment to an inner garment. Furthermore, it was under her obedient cooperation. Instantly, he felt the pleasure of avenging a great hatred. While igniting more flames, he wantonly violated her. The redness on Chao Tianjiao's face deepened, and she said hatefully, "Brat, are you satisfied now?" "No, it's still far from it. Senior Marshal Sister, please relax a little. Open your mind." He was no longer satisfied with just being a piece of cake. "If I demonize, I will definitely kill you." Her voice trembled. His threats seemed to be useless, so he opened his heart completely as he was told. Her mind had already developed an opening, so Li Qingshan's Yin spirit immediately invaded it. He smiled. "As you wish." Her eyes glazed over, and even the sensations in her body disappeared. Everything about her body was suddenly open. In front of him, Dabai no longer had any secrets. This was far more powerful than the invasion of her body. Not long ago, she had also asked him to use an illusionary realm to show her the situation at the Cold Blood Pass. However, that was equivalent to him weaving some lies to her from outside the wall, and she could chase him away at any time. Now, however, he was openly entering through the main gate. He had entered the room and even turned the tables. "Let's begin." Li Qingshan's voice sounded beside her ear, but it also seemed to come from the bottom of her heart. In a trance, the scenery before her eyes changed. The cold pass, the cruel battlefield, and the colorful snowflakes all disappeared. A small river flowed by in front of her eyes, sparkling under the scorching sun. The wind was warm, and the willows were gentle. It was March, the most pleasant time of the year. The surroundings were empty and silent. There were only a few birds chirping. She gently took off her shoes and soaked her feet in the clear river water. A few small fish swam around, and she was so comfortable that she forgot everything else. "Prodigy," a gentle voice sounded behind her. She suddenly turned around to see her handsome boyfriend pushing aside the willows and walking toward her. She hurriedly retracted her feet, and the water rippled, but she lost her balance and fell backward. "Be careful." A large hand caught her waist, and their eyes met. Their breaths were intertwined, and they were both intoxicated. Another large hand caught her, and she felt a tingling sensation from her feet all the way to the bottom of her heart. She moaned softly, and she fell onto the grass beside the river, where she melted into the spring breeze and flowing water. Li Qingshan began to comprehend the dual cultivation method. The sexual power sect was not an unorthodox sect. Instead, it was the mainstream sect of the heretical sects, and its sex scriptures even surpassed that of the Holy Scripture sect and the Mercury sect. The sexual power sect didn't worship the heavenly lord of the realm of freedom, but rather the linga. The so-called linga was actually the heavenly lord of the realm of freedom. It symbolized reproduction, and it contained the power of creation and rebirth. In the eyes of ordinary believers, this was the most important image of the heavenly lord of the realm of freedom. As for the appearance of waving 6 arms, opening the third eye, and shooting out world-destroying fire, it was a special state that received very few believers. After all, reproduction was the norm, and it was what all living beings wanted to see. However, the great destruction and destruction were bound to be short-lived and terrifying. Gods wanted believers to be in awe, but after all, respect came first. Li Qingshan was completely focused on comprehending the dual cultivation method of the school of strength and nature. As a matter of fact, even the wet dream was secondary. The thing that pranks could not do without was seriousness. Moreover, he had to be serious. Chao Tianjiao's yang spirit was too powerful, and its power was 10 times or even 100 times that of his yin spirit. Moreover, its evil spirit was extremely heavy. If he couldn't enter the perfect dual cultivation state as soon as possible, even if she was willing to cooperate and open her mind, his yin spirit would quickly be torn apart. If he resisted even a little, his yin spirit would be directly destroyed. In such a short time, part of his yin spirit had been worn out, and he had just unbuttoned her clothes in the illusion. Under such circumstances, how could he enjoy himself? Before he could do anything, his yin spirit had been worn out, which was even worse than impotence. His prank had failed, and it had become a heavy blow. However, he gradually understood something. In that case, the process of my cultivation of the heavenly book of freedom seems to be a little abnormal. Reproduction and destruction, creation and destruction, were always two sides of the same coin, the outside and the inside. However, generally speaking, there was an order between the two. It was definitely creation before destruction and reproduction before destruction. Especially for all living beings, the former was not only more important, but also easier to understand. However, he had started with great destruction and great destruction, and he had quickly comprehended the ultimate skill of the way of freedom, the most powerful combat power, the world-destroying fire. You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.